You are watching Sound Candy Talk live.
Tunaingia vijijini, mijini na hata jijini kukuletea taarifa mchana kutwa. Usiku tunaketi kitako, tunadadavua tukichanganua taarifa na makala muhimu yanayokuhusu wewe na familia yako. Ungana na Bernard Ngozi kwenye Open Forum Political Show kuanzia saa 4 usiku hadi dakika zake kila siku ya wiki kwenye
Tonight, the show that gives you an opportunity to air what you feel and think about the latest development on our political front. Well, a lot is taking place so fast. Therefore, everybody must work hard to stay on the cutting edge as far as making sense of our politics is concerned, and of course, remaining on top of all matters. Tonight, this is Sound Candy Talk Live. 72 people have cast their vote already, and only 42 have liked the video. Justified. So from the look of things, the majority of Kenyans think the government need to up their. Glad to report we are back on the main channel as well, and therefore we are asking everybody to join from wherever you are. Sound Candy Talk Live YouTube channel, and we are also live on X as well as extended to Facebook.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back for this another amazing moment. Good morning for those who are waking up this morning time, and everyone that is watching, please, wherever you're watching me, please tell me how you are. I am your host, Shadizo, tonight, and welcome for the Political Open Forum show, whereby we'll be checking and analyzing what is happening. This is the only show that gives you opportunity to share your opinion and to share your views too, to everyone, and every Kenyans can hear from you. I want to welcome you all. Feel free and feel part and parcel of this, as even we are diving in to have the great conversation tonight. So tonight, I will have the conversation towarding the side of the reviewing of what our President Ruto said earlier. Apart from that one, I'll also be checking about more details on what the things that have been running up and things that have been running around all over. Okay, one of the saddest news today on the headlines bullets tonight is 4 kids counted dead after falling inside a pit of a latrine, and also other breaking out news from every dimension and every corner of Kenya. So I want to welcome you all. Feel free and feel part and parcel of this, as even we're having the great conversation tonight, because tonight I know everything that we're gonna have tonight here on this desk is great conversation. So I want to welcome you all. Feel free and feel part and parcel of this, as even we are doing the analyzation of everything. Team TikTok, for those who are still joining from TikTok side, I welcome you all. Feel free and feel part and parcel of this, as we are walking this journey together. And for those who are watching us from Facebook and YouTube, please tell me where you're watching me from, and it'll be good so that we can have the analysis together. Tonight, I'll be sharing with Team TikTok. I want to bring Team TikTok on the board. So if you are free to join up, please join and be part and parcel of this, so that we can have the great time together tonight, as even we are discussing it all tonight. I want to welcome you all. Feel free and feel part and parcel of this, so that we can have the journey together as even we are moving on swiftly and analyzing what has happened on the updates of the day and what's more going on and on all over in our nation. We'll be checking more details towards that. But what I want to do is I want to welcome you, feel part and parcel of this as we welcome even also other people to join and being part and parcel of this, because if you are part and parcel of this, you are a true patriotic who wants the good for his nation. So I want to welcome you. Feel free and feel part of the nation as we are building up the nation and as we are creating up Kenya. Kenya is ours and Kenya is for us and is for us one and for because Kenya is ours, we can't sit down wait to see as this collapse. So I want to welcome you. Feel free and feel part and parcel of this as even we are making Kenya to work, not to collapse. That will be good. For those who are joining, tell me where you're watching me from and be good. Thank you for those who are joining. I'll be shouting out to everyone who is joining up. But tonight, I have a great show lined upon ahead before you, and we will be having the conversation tonight. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from that other person, and I want to hear from everyone and from every Kenyan who is watching. So I welcome you all. Feel free and feel part and parcel of this as even we are having the analyzation of the day together, of the updates of every part and everything that has been happening tonight. So I want to welcome you. Feel free and feel part and parcel of this as even a comprehending together. But before we roll down, let me just take this a minute as I wait people to join. Let us give shout out to everyone who's watching us. I'll begin with a hair. People from the other side. SC Sister saying good evening, Bernard, and everyone of you. Thank you, Bernard, for we're good. Esther, I know Bernard has received your greetings. Apart from that one, I see the other people still joining up and still joining on. Let me take a read for those people who are still joining on. I see somebody called Dorit. Thank you, Dorit, for joining. Please tell me where you're watching me from. I see somebody called Hell. First Lady, thank you First Lady. Namuona kuna mwingine anajiita Kenyo, thank you Kenyon, thank you. Namuona mwingine pale anajiita Elvis, thank you Elvis. Namuona Diana Wairimo, thank you D. Namuona nani mwingine anajiita Caroline, thank you Caroline. Aundi, thank you. Naona mwingine anajiita Jopto, thank you Jopto. Namuona mwingine anajiita pale anajiita nani? Naushk, thank you. Namwana mwingine anajiita Jijo, thank you. Namwana mwingine anajiita Feli, thank you Feli. Fair.lee, thank you for those who are joining up. Please tap the screen, share the live, and also for those who are joining us on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok, share it all so that we can be together. Please tell me where you're watching me from, and it'd be good, and tell me where do you feel our government is going. Do you feel that Ruto's speech was it right as he was saying it the previous day, because he said it and he was so emphatic and he was so determined and he was so focused while he was giving it out. So I want to listen from you and I want to know every opinion also from you too, so that we can have the great conversation together. Please subscribe if the first time coming across the channel and join up the show so that we can have the great time together. I see people, the comment section is still getting hotter. I welcome for those who are telling him thank you. Mwana mwingine anasema kwamba risasi ni za Mungu. Jinyakulia yako kwa bei nafuu. Thank you. Okay, risasi ni za Mungu. Jinyakulia yako kwa bei nafuu. By the way, today we have been having a tricky conversation a little bit. Let me bring this conversation also here. I want to see you on the comment section giving the response. There's this conversation that be raining out that there's some people Gen Zs ama kuna wazazi ambao wanatuma watoto kwenda maandamano wanajua kuna milioni 2. Do you feel there is a parent that with the normal sense, with the parent with the reasoning mind can do that? Kuna mzazi anaweza fanya hivyo, I don't know, but kuna wazazi ambao wanasemekana kwamba wanatuma watoto wao maandamano kwa sababu wanajua kuna milioni 2. Anatuma mtoto maandamano anajua kuna milioni 2. This got me hot. This get me hot. This one get me offside, and I don't know what to say about it. But I feel like kidogo hii naye imechemuka zaidi. I want to hear from you. I want to listen from you too. I want to listen from every Kenyan. Unahisi kwamba kweli kuna mama mzazi anaweza tuma mtoto aende maandamano ndio anajua kuna milioni 2? Is that realistic? Is that realistic? Is that truth? ama ni story tu za watu ambao wanasema. So tonight on our political front we'll be checking also that, and also today I will be bringing Team TikTok on the front. So Team TikTok, be ready. Leo tunaenda live Team TikTok on YouTube. I'll be bringing you on YouTube for those who are joining in YouTube, and also I like to listen from you, and I like also to hear from you, and I like also to listen from every Kenyan and everyone that's watching. Please tell me where you're watching me from, and be part and parcel of this as we are joining up for moving on and on swiftly. But tonight I have made a great show aligned before you, and we'll be having every segment of it, because before we have the gang, we'll have the highlights of the day. But before the highlight of the day, we'll be having the one segment, new segment that I've involved it. It's called Kivumbi cha Siasa. So tonight we will be opening the show with Kivumbi cha Siasa. Then after Kivumbi cha Siasa, we'll get the updates of the day. Kivumbi cha Siasa, this is what happened in back 2 days before. Just for a few minutes, want we take humble time? Let us watch this Kivumbi cha Siasa.
Wafikirie vizuri.
We want to advise you that the one-term movement is not getting you out of power outside the constitution.
Killings are neither accidental nor isolated.
Those who infiltrate protests to incite violence and the root.
During the 35th anniversary of Sabasaba, Kenyans from all walks of life, led by Gen Zs, unarmed and peaceful, went to the streets. This is not the first demonstration that has happened in Kenya this year, where lives have been lost and property destroyed.
Tuko pamoja? Wafikirie vizuri.
Unbeknown to these peaceful demonstrators, the tired regime of Ruto had a well-organized state-sponsored militia in cohort with the police and other state security agencies to maim, kill and destroy property, and blame it on the Kikuyu community.
Na mtu asinia, unajua wananiambia sijui nini, sijui Moi, sijui Moi. Moi alikuwa rais wa Kenya. Vile Kibaki alikuwa rais wa Kenya. Vile Uhuru alikuwa rais wa Kenya. Na kabla ya Moi kulikuwa na Kenyatta. Na baada ya Moi kulikuwa na Kibaki. Na baada ya Kibaki kulikuwa na Uhuru. Hii kisirani ni ya nini? Hapana. Hapana. Hapana, hapana. Hiyo ni upuzi. Sio kama naelewana bwana. Tuko pamoja. Hii fujo yote wananiletea. Mbona hawakuletea Kibaki? Mbona hawakuletea Uhuru? Hii madharau na kiburi ni ya nini? Hapana, hiyo mchezo tuache. Sio kama naelewana bwana. Let us sort out our problems. Tuache ukabila, tuache chuki, tuache kiburi, tuache madharau.
And specific leaders who are perceived unfriendly to this killer regime. This targeted profiling of the Kikuyu community and destruction of their specific business is an economic sabotage not new to the narrative of William Ruto.
Sisi wote ni wa Kenya. We are all Kenyans. Na hakuna Mkenya bora kuliko mwenzake. Sisi wote ni wa Kenya. Ama mnasemaje watu wa Nairobi? Tumekubaliana? Na kuna watu wanafikiria kwamba wataendesha fujo Kenya hii. Juzi wamechoma mali ya wananchi. Supermarket imeporwa. Wameharibu mali ya wananchi. Wameharibu biashara ya wananchi. Na wao ni viongozi wamechochea hiyo maneno. Wanalipa vijana kwenda choma biashara ya ule. Kwenda choma biashara ya ule. Wale wote ambao wamepatikana katika hiyo njama ya kuiba na kupora mali ya wananchi na kuchoma biashara za watu wengine watachukuliwa hatua ya sheria na wote watafungwa. Na wao viongozi wao, we are coming after you. You cannot sponsor violence in the Republic of Kenya and expect to go scot-free. Sijui kama tunaelewana. Na mimi nataka niwaambie Wakenya, mtu yeyote ambaye anaenda kupiga polisi, mtu yeyote anaenda kuvamia police station, that is a declaration of war in the Republic of Kenya.
It is also incumbent upon the police to distinguish between peaceful demonstrators and criminal elements.
It is not acceptable. Sijui kama tunaelewana, my friends. No, enough is enough. Haiwezi kuendelea tena. I will protect property ya wananchi wa Kenya, maisha ya wananchi wa Kenya.
Among the number of unemployed people we have, over 60% are youth. And this is what drives young people into crime and drugs and into a general state of hopelessness and despair.
Biashara ya wananchi wa Kenya. It is the responsibility of the government of Kenya, which I lead, that is going to make sure hii vita ya kuharibu mali na kuchoma biashara ya watu itakoma. It must stop. Sijui kama tunaelewana. And we are going to use whatever means that is available to make sure that we stabilize the country. We cannot accept mayhem and anarchy to destroy the development we have in this country. Sasa mimi naulize watu wa hapa Kilimani, nyumba tunajenga kama hii, ati watu washenzi wanakuja kuwakisha moto wachome. Surely ni nchi tunajenga ama ni nchi tunabomoa? Alafu watu wanatuambia Kiingereza sijui siasa nini. Hapana, that will not go on. You can call me whatever names you want to call me, but I will make sure that there is peace and stability in Kenya by all means possible. Sijui kama tunaelewana, my friends. Hapana, hii kuchoma mali ya wananchi itakoma. Mwananchi anahangaika miaka nyingi kutengeneza biashara yake. Mwananchi anapanga mambo yake. Alafu mtu mwanasiasa, mtu mjinga anakuja anapanga maandamano, anapanga fujo, mali ya mwananchi inaharibika, alafu anatuambia ni siasa. Hiyo ni siasa gani? Hiyo ni siasa? Na kama wako na mpango, si tukutane 2027? Watengeneze sera yao, tukutane na hawa 2027. Njia ya mkato hapa katikati hakuna. Tumekubaliana watu wa Nairobi? Yes. Na wasikie vizuri. Wasikie vizuri na waelewe. Tumekubaliana Nairobi? Mnasema tuendelee na kufanya kazi. This country will not be destroyed by a few people who are impatient and who want to have a change of government using unconstitutional means. It is not going to happen. And I want to tell them it is not going to happen. Sijui kama tunaelewana. Tumeelewana? Yes. Na kama walikuwa wanafikiria ile walikuwa wanafikiria, wafikirie tena. Because mimi nimenyamaza, mimi nimewavumilia, lakini mahali imefika. Enough is enough. I want to say that for the avoidance of any doubt. Sijui kama tumeelewana jameni. Tumeelewana? Wacha nirudie. Those who attack our police, those who attack our security men and women, those who attack our security installations, including police stations, that is a declaration of war. That is terrorism. We are going to deal with you firmly.
That is terrorism. We are going to delete family. Miyo mmekuwa kivumbi cha siasa. That's the new segment. Thank you for those who are still joining up. I want to welcome you all. Feel free and feel part and parcel of this. So as we are living in the updates, the video of the day, let us join up for the updates of the day. Yala ambayo mejiri ni gani na yapi ambayo mejiri. We'll first first begin with the stories that are getting to the headlines and hitting my points. Hitting on my headlines tonight. We'll be speaking about the story about the sugar factories. But first of all, I'll begin with the story of these young kids who lost their lives. This is sorrow by where the family losing, the 4 families losing different kids. This is something that got them aware and never expected such like things can happen, because already right now many people are mourning because of losing their loved one to the court. This losing the kid because of a certain hall. So let us check out this and then see, mourn with the family.
Train collapsed at Queen of Angels Academy in Tarbo constituency was in Geshu County. Emotions run high as family members received the news of the tragedy. Emergency and rescue reports indicating that one child is still missing. Community members are now demanding accountability and better infrastructure.
Hiyo choo ilikuwa imejengwa vizuri, sababu imejengwa kuanzia chini mpaka juu. Ilianza kujengwa kuanzia chini, and I think it's because of the heavy rainfall that these areas experienced for today, very heavy. So we'll expect the expert report on the same.
Wachenzi mara mingi wenye mnapewa kazi katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, tumekuwa walafi, tumekuwa watu wa kudanganya. Wacha tufanye kazi, unapopata ile kazi iweze kukusaidia katika maisha yako. Usije ukafanya kazi ili ialipike, ili uweze kupata kazi kesho yake. Kwa hivyo lazima tuwe wangwana wa Kenya.
Upande wa hizo choo, mimi ni mzazi hapa kwa miaka mingi. Mtoto wangu ameanzia hapa darasa ya chini, darasa la chekechea, hadi wakati huu wako college wamekuwa wakitumia hizo vyoo. Hiyo vyoo ya watoto ndio pia walimu wetu wa hii shule wanatumia. Walimu wetu wanatumia choo hiyo moja na watoto wetu wa chekechea.
Wow. That's what has gotten the families that are having to eat. See, we're leaving the families.
By looking at the global figure of 2.57 trillion shillings, which is the highest in the history of the country and, of course, of the Kenya Revenue Authority. This is 100.64% achievement or attainment of the target. We'll be talking about that shortly. So this is a growth of 104 billion shillings if you have to compare with what was reported similar period the previous financial year. Now, beyond that, you're talking about, so the revenue collected by KRA is split into two. There's the exchequer revenues, which is the revenues or the taxes that KRA collects, but also there's some resources that the KRA collects on behalf of government agencies or departments, which is the agency revenue, which is now rising to 248.3 billion shillings. For the exchequer revenue, it's 2.3 trillion shillings. Again, a record high for the authority. Beyond that, we're talking about two categorization of that 2.57 trillion shillings. It's split into domestic revenue, which has reported 1.69 trillion shillings, representing 66%, and the balance of 34% is in customs revenue of the figure 879 billion shillings. We'll be looking at a breakdown of a bit of that. Beyond that, the major taxes for the financial year ending June 30th this year, the pay-as-you-earn taxes on salaries, of course, you remember the graduated scale, reported 560.9 billion shillings. The other tax head is corporation tax. This is taxation on companies, on the businesses that are run by companies, which is 30% of profits, reporting 304.8 billion shillings. And the value-added tax on both domestic goods and services, as well as those that have been imported, it's standing at 660 billion shillings, which is an important tax head in the country. There are some new taxes that had been introduced by the government. Digital service tax, which was retired at the end of last year, reported some 345.5 million shillings and was replaced by significant economic presence tax, reporting 461 million shillings. Of course, these are services that are taxed for being offered through the online platforms, including companies that would be operating in the country and they are not resident here. Now, focusing on the trends of this taxation. In June last year, when the then Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, presented the budget estimates to the National Assembly, the target for KRA was supposed to be 2.7 trillion shillings. Of course, this has evolved over time because the government has been issuing supplementary budgets. The latest one in June 2025 was a target of 2.55 trillion shillings. And that's how the Kenya Revenue Authority has managed to surpass it by reporting 2.57 trillion shillings. But if you had to look at that figure, subject it against the original figure, then this would be 95% of the original targets, which essentially is set by the National Treasury. Now, beyond that, you're looking at the progress that has been made by the Kenya Revenue Authority over the last few years. In the year 2021, which is one of the years we choose to cover this 5 financial years, 2.03 trillion shillings were collected. That time, the increment or the growth had been at 21.7%. Of course, the country was coming from the pain and the impact of the COVID-19 season. Then in 2022-2023 financial year, the year ending June 2023, 2.16 trillion shillings was collected. This was sort of the first year in office of President Ruto, and that was a 6.7% growth. In the financial year 23-24, ending June last year, 2.407 trillion shillings was reported. You recall that this is also the time that the government introduced the housing levy. So there was a bit of collections that went into that, and also the increment in terms of the graduated taxes were also taking effect. That was an 11% growth that time. But now the current year, of course, you're talking about 2.57. The year just ended in June, 2.57 trillion shillings. The growth you'll see has quite dropped almost by half to 6.7%. Now, for the current financial year, starting 1st of July, to June 2026, the target or the projection by the National Treasury is to raise 2.75 trillion shillings, which would be 7% achievement. We'll see how this will evolve in course of the financial year as the National Treasury may set different targets. Now, important to look at some of the key tax heads. For instance, the pay-as-you-earn, which I told you is about taxation on salaries. In the last financial year, the year ending June 2024, 543 billion shillings were reported. So there's a growth of 561 billion shillings, which is a 3.3% growth. The corporation tax, again, the taxes on companies, there's a growth of 9.7%, you can see there. The domestic VAT has also grown by 4.1%. The betting taxes have grown from 24 billion shillings to 26 billion shillings, which is representative of 8%. And the domestic excise on the various goods in the country has reduced from 74 billion shillings to 69.4 billion shillings. And the KRA is explaining that part of this is could be certain challenges with collection of such on beer and tobacco. Now, the other figure that has been evolving over the last 4 or 5 years is the agency collections. Remember, I told you about agency collections, which are collections on behalf of the government. This talks about the NSSF. There's the affordable housing levy of 1.5%. There's the KEBS and fuel taxes that are collected once you buy fuel at the petrol station. 2020-2021 was at 125 billion shillings. In 2021-2022 was at 131.4 billion shillings. 22-23 was 136 billion shillings. This is an important year because it is during this year that now the affordable housing levy was introduced at 1.5%, and you can see the jump of 34%, jumping to 184 billion shillings in the financial year 23-24, and the year just ended. You can see that figure almost growing by about 60 billion shillings to stand at 248.3 billion shillings, which is 34.9% growth. So you can see the impact of some of the changes that the government has been putting in place. So even as you report, the growth in the tax collected to 2.57 trillion shillings, you can also see what is the contribution of the agency fees, because 60 billion shillings is actually more than 50% of the growth you're witnessing over the last 1 year. And we'll have more coverage of the Kenya Revenue Authority report in our business news, which you take a short break now. When we return, here is what's coming up in business.
This is what has happened on it and on what things that are going on and on. So I would like you to join me so that we can have the conversation. For those who are joining up, the link is on the comment section. Use it very well. Let us use the link and then we join so that we can have the best time ever together, because you are here for me and I am here for you to make you the best and to make the best update. I've seen Ondumani in the building. I think Ondumani is coming back. I've seen him trying to come up the show. I don't know what's the reason, but I hope everything will be okay and everything will be fine too, as we are checking it out. So I want to welcome you. Feel free and feel part and parcel of this, as even we're having the correct conversation. So tonight, let me break you to the breaking of it. This is the bang of the day. This is the news intro of the day. This is the deal of the day. So President Ruto speaks again, okay, and people think the speech was so controversial a little bit. The speech was so not so mindful for the Kenyans because of the harsh words Mr. President has used. And tonight we are here to check out, what do you feel? Do you feel that Mr. President what he was saying, was it right? Or what Mr. President was saying, was it to the platform, or was it worth it for it? I want to hear from you, and I want to listen also from you. Please just give me your opinion. If you want to join up the show, join up using the link on the comment section on YouTube, Sound Candy Talk, also on Facebook, Sound Candy Talk, and also on our another channel, YouTube, Sound Candy Talk Live channel. So that's on our main channel. Please use the link to join up the studio so that we can have the conversation one-on-one with you inside the studios. Click the link, let the streamer configure your camera and audio, and then bam, you get yourself inside the studio, then we have the conversation. So as you see joining up, let us watch this. This is what Ruto said today.
Staff stands over the recent protests, saying the Constitution requires him to protect lives and livelihoods. The president said some of his critics are yet to believe that he has ascended the office of the president, as Olive Barrows now reports.
In what appeared a less charged recap of his tough talk against the chaos witnessed on Sabasaba, President William Ruto has warned cannot pass for the right to protest.
How is it that a demonstration or protest ends up in death, in rape, in destruction of property, in destruction of business? And is that really what we want to do as a nation? I dare say no. And for now, I am the custodian of that constitution, and I will make sure that I will defend the constitution of the Republic of Kenya. Tuko pamoja, my friends? Yes. Until somebody else takes over, I am here, and I will make sure that hii mchezo tunawachana naye.
The president asserted that some of his critics are yet to accept his ascendance to office nearly 3 years down the line.
Kuna watu walikuwa na matatizo sana, hata saa hizi bado hawajaamini mimi ni rais, bado wanahangaika. Mimi ndio niko hapa kwa sasa. Wajipange. Mimi ndio niko hapa.
President Ruto defended his job creation record, saying he has delivered on his promises.
Many people were asking me, what the hell about houses? What is this about houses? Who doesn't have a house? We had all manner of debates around housing. Let me tell you, it wasn't so much about the jobs. It wasn't so much about the houses. It was so much about the jobs. Because of the housing program, for which I have paid a very high political price, there are 320,000 people, young people, working.
Elsewhere, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen, speaking in Tana River County on Thursday, maintained that the government will not sit back and allow anarchy to reign.
This idea of coming to Maandamano and saying we want police, we want to invade police station, we want parliament, we want to ban judiciary, and therefore we want to invade State House. That is not protest. That is not issues of grievances of governance. That is actually madness that we must not accept in our country.
Murkomen having preceded President Ruto in instructing the police to use their gun on those who, under the cover of protests, caused damage to property. Olive Burrows, Citizen TV.
Now, that's what happened on today. For those who are still joining up, this is Sound Can Talk, and this is what the briefing of the day is looking like. Okay, tell me your opinions. What do you feel about that? What do you feel about this, or all of this kind of stories? You feel about all what's being said? Is Ruto right? Is Ruto wrong? Is it confidential or inconfidential? I want to hear from you so that we can move on together and move on swiftly together, as even as still having the conversation, because the conversation is bigger and it's wider, and we have a lot on tonight, so that we can come together to the agreement, as even as still checking it out. Okay, as even we are checking the story of Ruto, there are some families still cries for justice. They still want justice to be done. They still mourns for their beloved ones, and they still mourns for their people who are killed during the protest. This is the couple of playing. I'll play the couples of video of people who are still seeking for justice. This is their cry to the government and to the people who can help them, because they are saying that some of them, they don't have the help even where to begin or where to begin. So please let us watch this, and let us, if you can be able to help them to
today call for the shooting and killing.
Please do so, because these are our brothers and sisters. Some of them, they have families, they have kids, but they are suffering because of what was the outcome. Let us watch this clearly.
Where Member of Parliament Nelson Koech today called for the shooting and killing of violent protesters who vandalized property. National Assembly Defense, Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committee says the Constitution allows the police to use their firearms to protect property and life, adding that President William Ruto's shoot in the leg order is not sufficient. Emmanuel Toh has more.
We will arrest everyone. In an emotional outburst at Chebirir Bay Center in his Belgood constituency, MP Nelson Koech called for a shoot-to-kill order against anti-government protesters.
Na mimi nataka niseme na nishukuru Rais William Samoei Ruto. Wakati jana umesema shoot but do not kill. I want to repeat it here. In fact, shoot and kill.
Koech also serves as the chairperson of the powerful National Assembly Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee, urged the police to use lethal force against lawless protesters who loot property.
You cannot have someone who is going to terrorize you and your family, and you are telling me you cannot shoot and kill. You cannot have someone who is coming after your businesses armed and with weapons, and you want to that you cannot shoot and kill. The Constitution, the Police Act, has given the police the powers to use their arms where they have evaluated the risk of their lives is in danger.
The MP adding State House and other protected areas to places where violent protesters should be gunned down.
Anyone who wants to go to a protected area like State House is not an ordinary person. That is a criminal. That is an armed person that must be dealt with equal force. And the only force that applies to such people is to shoot and kill.
Koech turning his guns on the opposition leader who claim the government has been hiring goons to fight off demonstrators.
If you think that the government is sending goons and assassins to attack people's property and investment, why do you have a problem when the government then goes after the people they have sent, as you claim? Wacha, we will arrest everyone. And I can tell you, they are terrorists. And they are going to be charged as either facilitating terrorism or they are terrorists themselves. Yule mama ambaye alichomewa biashara yake ya county supermarket alifanya makosa gani?
The lawmaker telling off opponents over the one-term mantra against President William Ruto, saying he will serve 2 terms.
Opuzi yenu mnatuambia sijui one term ya nani? Nani alikuambia sisi ndio tutakaa one term? Kibaki hakukaa one term, Uhuru hakukaa one term. Sisi umeona wakati imetufikia ndio sisi ni washenzi tukae one term. Tunapiga term mbili. Unulize. Ati wanatupangia na sisi tumekaa hivi. Kama ni kupanga, wasifikirie hatuwezi kupanga. Ni vile tunapenda amani na wachunge hii amani sana.
Emmanuel Toa, Citizen TV.
At the same time, President Mayo remains in police custody over incitement claims.
That's one of the things the president said. Let us watch out this.
Melita Oletenges reports.
2 days after the Director of Public Prosecutions, Renson Igonga, approved terrorism charges against 36 suspects linked to the June 25th and Sabasaba protests, all have now taken plea at the Kahawa Law Courts. The group includes 10 people from Matu in Machakos, 2 from Kuyu, and 2 from Kiambu. Among them, political allies of former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, Peter Kinyanjui Wanjiru, Elias Kawanjiru, and Sarah Wanjiko Thiga. The DPP alleges that the accused were involved in the destruction of public property in Kikuyu, including the Law Courts, Probation Office, Sub-County offices, and the Chief's Office, in what has been described as coordinated acts of domestic terrorism.
Your Honor must be explained.
Meanwhile, Senior Magistrate Kipkemoi Koech has overruled a police application to detain Manyata MP John Mukunji and 2 co-accused individuals for 14 more days. The court granted each a bail of 300,000 shillings. In yet another case of crackdown on government critics, TikToker and businessman Godfrey Kakan Mayo, who was arrested by DCI officers on Wednesday night, remains in custody at Murde police station. Authorities allege he incited violence against police officers and their families in a now viral video.
You see, everyone that you guys have killed, those spirits of those people are living in the hearts of Kenyans. And those spirits will not be silent until you guys have paid the price of all your actions.
His family, however, says they have not been informed of any formal charges and are demanding his immediate release.
Tumeongea, ameniambia ana shida, aliojiwa tu, hajapigwa, hajafanywa anything. Yangu ni kuwa, ni ujumbe kwa serikali kuwa, haya mambo ya vijana, tuyaangalie kimakini kidogo, kama itaweza tuwe na national conversation.
Many youths are really being oppressed, and them speaking out does not mean that they are against the government. Them speaking out is the act of being a citizen, speaking out whatever we are feeling, actually. It's not out of context.
Kakan is expected to be arraigned at the Kahawa Law Courts. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV.
In the meantime, the family of a man whose body was seen being dragged on the ground by police officers in Juja is in distress and has decried the brutal manner in which Harrison Wachira was humiliated in death. Laura Otieno now reports on the pain of families, including that of a 16-year-old student who was allegedly beaten to death by police officers in Embu during the Sabasaba protests.
Oh my God! The video went on social media on Monday. The man whose body was dragged by police has been identified as Hamili is still reconciling with the horror and indignity meted on their kin. 37-year-old Wachira, confident of the assurance by government to protect lives and property on the day of the Sabasaba protests, was at his place of work in Juja. Hours later, hell broke loose.
Akaniambia huku ni kubaya. Nikamwambia wewe fanya hivi, funga kazi, usifanye kazi, uende nyumbani, nitakuja nitajua njia yenye nitapitia.
The dedicated mechanic was however felled by a bullet. He had reportedly taken cover behind stalled lorries. The familiar pieces of metal that had fended for him and his family became his deathbed.
Na Wachira alipigwa risasi na gari ya Subaru zenye zinaenda bila number plate. Amepigwa risasi hapa pande ya kulia ya shingo. Mwili yake haijakanyangwa, ile matope iko nayo kwa nguo ni ile alifurutwa chini kama mnyama.
In Embu, yet another family is in mourning. 16-year-old Benedict Muthome was reportedly beaten by police officers at Kiritiri town during the Sabasaba protests. He left home on Monday morning and his family's efforts to look for him proved futile.
Tukasikia fununu kuna mtu alichapwa, akaumizwa, akapelekwa kwa Embu akiwa mahututi. Hakupatikana kwa vitabu za Wanda. Finally alipatikana kwa kitabu ya mochari ikiwa known.
With the government showing little remorse and making no apologies for the apparent use of brute force, families are left with permanent scars.
Sisi tunapeaga hata maiti heshima yake. Kwa hivyo siku ingine na waomba, hata askari ni watoto wetu, ni ndugu zetu, ni baba zetu, naomba wachukulie mtu kama mtu.
Harrison Soshira's post-mortem examination will take place on Friday at the General Cargo Funeral Home in Thika, where his remains are preserved. Laura Otieno, Citizen TV.
Indeed, very heartbreaking story.
This is
stories for the families.
Stories. They're still moving on swiftly. Please tell me where you're watching me from and tell me that if the show is nice in you, please tell me that we can move on swiftly and swiftly. Okay, as we depart from that one, I want to check out the working out of the day, or what you call the data analysis of the day, because there are a lot of things that happen. There are a lot of things that have been seen, but sometimes we see, but sometimes we keep quiet. But tonight, I want to check out this, because this is what has made everything to go towards it is.
"31 lives lost. And just a fortnight ago, that number was 20. That is at least 51 Kenyan lives in a short space of 2 weeks. And looking back at the last 4 weeks, there have been protests at least once a week. The most recent one being Sabasaba. That is just 3 short days ago. Leaders have responded, and it was a case of implosion meeting rapture, as President William Ruto and his former deputy Rigathi Gachagua traded accusations that include talk of an attempted coup. We assess the Sabasaba aftermath that includes loss of lives, destruction of property, and the eruption of political rhetoric. Later on Sam Sense, we shall reflect on the concept of adulthood, especially political. On Kaikai's Kicker, who is the inciter between Nelson Koech and Kakan Mayo? On My Take, where are the coup plotters? Or shall we start with the effigies first? Jamila's memo tonight is X-rated and can only air after 11 p.m. The gang is here.
Hii fujo yote wananiletea, mbona hawakuletea Kibaki? Mbona hawakuletea Uhuru? Mimi nimenyamaza, mimi nimewavumilia, lakini mahali imefika, enough is enough. You can call me whatever names you want to call me, but I will make sure that there is peace and stability in Kenya by all means possible.
Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta were guided by the Constitution and the rule of law. They did not capture our constitutional institutions to work for them instead of working for Kenyans. They never killed children. They never attempted to build churches in State House. They never organized militias to destroy people's property and kill them. That is why you have a problem. And we also want to remind you that Mwai Kibaki had a difficult time from you, William Ruto. Videos are everywhere. You cannot say that Mwai Kibaki did not face resistance. It's on record that you gave hell to President Kenyatta for 5 years. So it is hypocritical for you to allege that Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta had a very easy time. Most of the problems Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta had came from yourself, and it's on record.
What a week it has been. I think the highest number of deaths that we've witnessed during the protests in one day, just one day, 31 people were killed. Welcome to the program. The hashtag is NewsGang at Citizen TV Kenya. Also on SMS, the number is 22422. We look forward to hearing from you. And in the wake of 31 lives lost, the reaction that we saw from government, I think, is the place to start, because what an interesting reaction to a day of protests, a day of barricades, a day when people were greatly inconvenienced, when 31 lives were lost. But Jamila, the first reaction was not empathy, not condoling, but it was anger.
Yes, Yvonne. In fact, when we listened to the president speaking in Kilimani, I think to the affordable housing project, it was a tone of nimekasirika yangu yote. I'm very, very upset with how things are going. And it is okay to be upset because things are not going well. A few days before that, 31 people had been killed. To date, we're still seeing families going for autopsies of their loved ones. And you hear them being told that they died from gunshot wounds. We have children at Kenyatta National Hospital. We're hearing there's some even as young as 7 years old who were shot while they were in their houses. There was 12-year-old Bridget who died while they were watching television with her mom in Dumberi. A stray bullet got into the house and shot her in the head and she died. We have families who are still looking for their loved ones ambao hawajaonekana tangu siku ya Sabasaba. What do you tell those people? Because not a word of compassion came out of the president when he spoke. He did not say we condole with the families.
But did he acknowledge the loss of lives at all during that speech?
No, he didn't. We didn't hear it when we were watching him speak in Kilimani. And one of the things that comes to mind is that the audience that he was speaking to, he had gone there for the affordable housing project. And there were these mamas who were there. And I'm sure they had not come there, whether they were brought there or not, because of course kuna maswali kuhusu waliletwa ama walikuwa pale, notwithstanding. I don't think they came there to be told about, kusomewa about kuna jaribio la kupendua serikali, kuna wale ambao wananipinga. They came there probably kuja kusikiza mambo ya nyumba ilikuwa launched, manyumba yalikuwa yanakuwa launched. But then the president goes on this long tirade and blames everybody for everything. Without even thinking of maybe there could be the problem on this side. I need to look inwards and see pengine kuna shida ingine hapa hivi ambayo mimi sitaki kuona ama sioni. Because 31, Yvonne, is a high number. And in fact, we did an analysis, and in the past 1 year, according to figures from the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, 115 people died in the protest since June 2024. That's 115 families who've lost a loved one. And not even acknowledging that and saying we condole is, I think, in my opinion, insensitive. It makes people think that the value for human lives in this leadership, in this administration is pretty low, that it's okay that 31 people have died and you don't say anything. In fact, it surprised me when I saw the CS for Foreign Affairs, who's the chief cabinet secretary, condoling with the victims of the floodings in Texas. That was sad that about 119 or so people died there due to flooding, when you've not had anyone condoling with the families of those who had been killed in the Gen Z protests. The tone of voice, what was said, who it was said to, was really wanting, in my opinion. And then, of course, you had the reaction from the opposition on the same. But I think it is important that that acknowledgement comes through, Yvonne, because Yoku Somewa reminds me of how things were just right after the June 25th protest in 2024 when the president spoke at State House and how angry he was. But when you hear words like coup, terrorism, treason, jaribio kupindua serikali, we are having people in court being charged with terrorism. It's a bit worrying, I guess, in terms of where exactly we're going as a country. And it's important now that we look at what this all means. Tutaendelea hivi paka lini?
Yeah, and that's the thing about who blinks first and who sort of comes down to listen. And just as we're talking about, and I'd like us to listen to the order that he delivered, 1-3, but you know, interestingly, like we said, he was heavier on the destruction of property and what should be done to those found looting businesses. So I'd like us to listen to that as well.
Ambaye anachukua moto, anaenda kuchoma biashara ya mtu, anaenda kuchoma mali ya watu wengine. Mtu kama huyo apigwe risasi miguu, aende hospitali, akienda kotini. Yes. Yeah.
So, but curiously, I would wonder what the president's thoughts would be about anybody who is seen to or found to have taken the life of another. So what is his prescription for those who killed the 31 people? If this is shoot in the leg order for those, how about for those who killed the 31? But then the president went further because this is not just about property, apparently, but he made another grave allegation, and I think one that he has done before. So back in 2024, it was Ford Foundation. In 2025, there is another plot yet again to overthrow the government.
Kwanza niliona ati wanasema ati sasa hawatangojea 2027 ati tupige kura. Ati wanataka kupanga fujo. Ati wapange maandamano. Ati wachome mali ya watu. Ati walete maafa Kenya. Ati ndio wapindue serikali ya Kenya kabla ya 2027. Mimi nataka niwaambie wajaribu. Watajua hawajui. Kenya ni nchi ya demokrasia. Hamuwezi kutuambia ya kwamba mnaweza kupanga fujo ati mpindue serikali ya Kenya. Tafuteni vizuri.
Again, all of this a day after 31 people had been killed. There is no solemnity, there is no somber mood. Even the venue that was chosen for him to make these remarks was rather interesting at a side event. I don't even think too many people, Sam, know that this was an affordable housing project that was being launched or groundbreaking or whatever it was. But it's a very interesting tone to adopt a day after. Or was it 2 days after?
Yeah, it was 2 days after. Yeah. You know, what's fascinating to realize is that the venue, as you say, it's a police housing scheme. Remember, under the Affordable Housing Act, there is the provision that there will be institutional housing being constructed using the housing levy. But I'm just wondering, because Kilimani Police Station is within the Dagoretti North constituency, it's not far from a State House, and the president really wanted to see the progress of the housing. I'm just wondering, why was there a need to have what looks like residents of Kilimani attending that?
So this wasn't a launch of a completed project?
It looks like it was an inspection of progress made.
Ongoing, okay.
So those images, and there has been several stories being told about how those residents ended up in Kilimani. But as you know, Kilimani area, you don't find residents like that.
Like how?
The crowd is
milling about,
and mostly women, listening to the president. Kilimani is Kilimani, so those are not residents of Kilimani. First, secondly, they came to see affordable housing for the police officers. Those are not police officers. I don't know if they are spouses of police officers, but it's interesting to see that crowd in that space. But more importantly, it looks like the president had actually been pained by the events of Sabasaba, the events of June 25th, and frustrated by the political rhetoric that is going on in the country. And all one would understand it's human to sound so frustrated, to be so frustrated. But you see, this was 2 days after the fact, and the country had seen the destruction, seen the killings going on. Despite the frustration, you're looking to leadership. Recall on Monday evening, we heard from the ODM leader, Raila Odinga, who was calling the nation to what he terms as intergenerational national conclave.
Yeah.
And when he was asked, why are you addressing the nation? Why don't you speak to the president whom you have a working arrangement with? And his response was, the president is part of the nation, and he has had my statement.
Yes, yes.
So the next natural expectation of Kenyans was, what would the president say about the events of Monday? To end up saying what he said, to claim that this is all politics, and again, to miss the point that, and I think someone said, I think it was C.S. Kipchumba Murkomen, that even if a thief or a criminal dies, there's pain to the family.
Yes.
That acknowledgement was important, because when he says, don't kill them, shoot them in the leg, to break their legs, they go to hospital, then to court, he sounds to acknowledge that life is important. But how is it when life is lost, he's not acknowledging it and perhaps offering his sympathies, because criminals or not, they're still Kenyans and they have a right to life enshrined in the Constitution. But then again, based on that statement, you saw what happened. And I want us to listen to Rigathi Gachagua responding to that presidential statement, especially on the question of that nobody wants to overthrow the president.
President, nobody wants to throw you. Nobody wants to overthrow your government. Nobody wants you out of power through unconstitutional means. Mr. President, I and the people we work with are on record. We want to remove you from State House through the ballot in 2027. Please relax. We want you to serve your one term. Nobody wants you out of government unconstitutionally. Nobody has any plan to overthrow your administration, Mr. President. The leaders in this country, and indeed 95% of the Kenyan population, want to humiliate you at the ballot. They all relish that moment.
So it is unfortunate that it's coming to this, like it's a political contest of perhaps two of the most influential political figures in the country. Unfortunate that this continues at a time that families are hurting. You've seen the stories that we featured in our news of families that are now coming to terms with what happened to their loved ones, witnessing the family of that young man by the name of Shira, who was dragged. His body was dragged on by police officers. I mean, it's dehumanizing, lack of dignity, human dignity, totally. But then there's no that acknowledgement. And I was looking even at the post of the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, which I want to pull out right now, the Kipchumba Murkomen, on the day of Sabasaba. He went ahead to say that, of course, acknowledging the importance of Sabasaba Day, but at the same time, he said that this evening I went around Nairobi City to thank our law enforcement officers who are on duty to ensure the safety of our people and the security of their property. And thanks to their efforts and other officers across the country, incidents of violence, looting, and destruction of property were markedly reduced today compared to last week. So you see, there's continued emphasis on importance of property. And property is important because that's how we're able to progress as an economy. But when you lose lives, because the reason why we are spending 28% of the national revenue on education is so that you can build the human capital in the country. When you start losing adults who are already in the workspace, whatever sort of job they're doing, whether they sell, what do you call them, masks, like Boniface Karaoke, or they run blue chip companies, whatever it is, they are making their contribution in the labor force. So for a government to continue without acknowledging that people have died, so that even as you push for corrective measures, even as you talk about these are the people that are responsible. It's the political figures that are responsible. How about acknowledging that important fact? So I think the government has missed that opportunity to sound human, to sound that it cares for the people of Kenya, despite all the frustrations that are continuing. They have missed on that. Yeah. The other thing, if you're to look at even the sense of property destruction across the country, one wonders, so yes, you're available to protect property in Nairobi, but you're not available to protect property in other parts of the country to an extent that you find business persons coming out and complaining about the impact of this destruction as it has happened.
Yeah, and indeed. I just want to interrupt this conversation for a moment and give you the news, Justin, and this is regarding the appointment of commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Remember, there was a petition challenging their appointment at the High Court, which has just delivered its judgment this evening in that matter. This is the decision of the court. They have dismissed the petition that was seeking to invalidate the appointment of both the chairperson and commissioners of the IEBC. The court also held that that Gazette notice, if you recall, that was issued by the president to formalize their appointments was unlawful because there were conservatory orders that had been issued by the court. However, that initial Gazette notice has been quashed, but their substantive appointments can proceed. And so according to the courts, the appointments are valid, but the initial Gazette notice is not, but a new Gazette notice can be issued to regularize the appointments in compliance with the court's judgment. So just to simplify that, the High Court has said that the chairperson and the commissioners of the IEBC are duly appointed, but a fresh Gazette notice will be required to regularize their appointments and therefore allow them to take oath of office before the Chief Justice and formally assume their roles at the commission. So those who are vetted and passed as chairperson and commissioners of the IEBC will now very soon be sworn into office. So ladies and gentlemen, very soon it would seem we now have an Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission in place following that High Court order. I just thought I'd bring that in. Let's carry on with our conversation here, which is regarding, what happened. And I think we're talking about, loss of life is important regardless of who they are and what the law says. But then Jamila, the president was not the only one who had a lot to say. So it would seem that perhaps there is somebody who has bigger say or has powers exceeding the president, and that would be one member of parliament, Nelson Koech.
I think we need to listen to what he said.
Well, the president said shoot in the legs to disable them and take them to hospital. It would seem this MP speaks after the president and issues even more extensive orders that might not be within his purview constitutionally or otherwise. Let's listen to the Member of Parliament for Bill Good, who also happens to be the chair of the Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee in the National Assembly of Kenya.
Na mimi nataka niseme na nishukuru Rais William Samoei Ruto. Wakati jana umesema shoot but do not kill. I want to repeat it here. In fact, shoot and kill. You cannot have someone coming after your life and you do not want to shoot and kill. You cannot have someone who is going to terrorize you and your family and you are telling me you cannot shoot and kill. You cannot have someone who is coming after your businesses armed and with weapons and you want to tell me that you cannot use shoot and kill.
Jamila.
We've just all had like a few seconds of silence because really that is worrying. So human life does not matter at all. It does not matter at all. Like shoot and kill, it is okay. That's a life. Huyo ni mtu. Amezaliwa, amefika hiyo miaka amefika, huyo ni mtu. And then when he's speaking like that, he's speaking, in my opinion, from a place of privilege. Because in this country, a huge section of the population has been feeling excluded. You have the elite who, in my opinion, have always had their way, including what John Allen calls the elite consensus. which is what any attempts to watu kusikizana has benefited, with positions being gawanywa by those up there and people still feeling excluded. Even in this country, there are people who don't feel like wanapataga haki, who don't feel like, who struggle every single day for everything that they get. People who have never had it easy, and the population that has not had it easy, that struggles every day for everything that they have, is quite high. And then you have a member of parliament, a chair of such a powerful committee, a person of privilege, speak like that. Uwa. How can you say that kill people? I mean, what was that? The 115, the families of the 115 people who died feel when they hear that. Makes you think like our people's lives did not matter at all. There's a mother to a 12-year-old child who to date is waiting for justice. Anazungumza anasubiri mtu amsikize. We have another mother of another 12-year-old now. Ameongezeka hapo 2 days ago. Her daughter was killed in their house. Even if he tries to justify and say, muue wale ambao ni looters, wale ambao ni wahuni, wale.
Even for them, the law exists.
The law exists.
Right, yeah.
Hakuna mtu ana haki ya kuchukua maisha ya mtu mwingine, Yvonne. And Tuku spoke about the gentleman who was being dragged into Juja police station. We saw images of the people in masks and Subarus going around Kiserian and those areas killing people. So all that is allowed and justified. Shooting into a crowd, we saw so many of those. Boniface's life does not matter. He was selling masks. He was killed. He wasn't akwa anachochea. Alikuwa ako tu anafanya biashara yake akapigwa risasi. So it's really terrible and awful. And I think it's important that NCIC should question him. Aitaulizwe maswali. Because that is wrong. That is wrong. What if someone from the opposition said that? Ingekuwa shaenda kushikwa leo.
By this evening.
So sheria ni msumeno. Unapasa kukata pande zote.
And yet there was one young man, Kakan Mayo, who's,
Alibebo Juju.
Yes, he's sitting somewhere because he said something nowhere near, but let me not preempt what's going to go in there. But you can take a look at all of these examples and then never mind, these are people who are legislators, they understand the law. It's not within his purview at all.
And is learning from others, because basically this is how the political class views things. One thing they are really low on at the moment, and I want to start with what we saw with the president in Kilimani. The one thing that was clearly missing was empathy. This president struggles with empathy. And by empathy, we mean just that ability to feel the feelings of other people. How do they feel? How do families feel about losing people, even if in the circumstances that we saw on Monday? Because like we've illustrated there, among the deaths were that of a small 12-year-old girl that was watching television somewhere in Kiambu. Now, when you are president, remember at all times that leaders say that they are the father of the nation. In fact, there is that father of the nation, then mother of the nation for first lady. Moments like these are the ones that test that, whether you are indeed one. And when you don't show empathy at all, I know there are many ways you can do that. And by this I mean your inability to display your inability to show empathy. One is to turn up 2 days after that, and the tone is one of the kind that we should have expected from protesters on Monday. It's really loud, it's high, the pitch is very high, barely presidential. It was crowing from a sandpit that have won a contest. And that I don't know who gets the president to do some of these things. If the president wanted to react about a day that cost 31 lives, lost lots of property, then that was not the best platform to respond. Even the optics were just not adding up, because you remember, I think there was a platform in the middle of somewhere.
Yeah.
So he looks obviously from a raised position, and
talking down.
You're raised and you're raising your voice. There's something wrong. I don't want to go to the merits and demerits, right and wrong of Monday, but when the president stands up, he must look good across. For those who are affected, for those who support him, for those who don't support him, they still need to listen to him as the president of the country, not a partisan victor who has won, like I said, a sandpit contest. Why am I calling this a sandpit contest? Because it turned out to be one, as the events of the day proved. What we are also witnessing, which is what I call a sandpit contest, is the unfinished business in UDA following the fallout after the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua. Rigathi Gachagua, former deputy president, seems to have put everything into this fight against President Ruto. And by joining forming the party and basically becoming a difficult person to handle out there. And unfortunately, you can see on the government side, they have climbed down for this contest. That everything now that happens is seen from the narrow prism of, is Rigathi Gachagua at the end of it? And I just want us to listen to the 1.7 when one of the members of parliament talks about the events of Monday.
Tuambia sijui one term ya nani? Nani alikuambia sisi ndio tutakaa one term? Kibaki hakukaa one term, Uhuru hakukaa one term. Sisi umeona wakati imetufikia ndio sisi ndio washenzi tukae one term. Tunapiga term mbili. Fululizo. Kama taifa la Kenya na kama jamii hatuwezi hata siku moja. Na wasifikirie sisi ni waoga, hati wanatupangia na sisi tumekaa hivi. Kama ni kupanga, wasifikirie hatuwezi kupanga. Ni vile tunapenda amani na wachunge hii amani sana.
Sisi, who is Sisi? I think the only person that was on the ballot in who has won the race and serving the first term is President William Ruto. By Sisi, look at how emotions are starting to be whipped up. Yeah. And I mean ethnic emotions. When you look at Nelson Koech, he's speaking from, what is the name of that village? He's somewhere in his constituency of Belgut. Yeah. That's why he's crowing, he's, would he say the same in the middle of Nairobi or somewhere in Muranga? Can he make exactly the same sentiments, same remarks with that same tone? I think our leaders are reacting wrongly to a crisis by throwing emotions into place and increasingly whipping up tribal sentiments. Because by Sisi, I am sure Nelson Koech was not talking about President Ruto, was talking about the community. And how unfair is this? Because a community doesn't run for president. An individual in the community can run for president. And we saw that, with how Uhuru Kenyatta was treated in his last term, that, the community can also, turn its back on its leader. So what we should watch out for right now is the rise of emotions. You notice two things. Actually, one thing that's common about the speech by Koech, the MP, and the president, the tone is the same. Yeah. It's really high up there. And what was that little threat at the end about we can also do something? It's a very loaded threat. And again, without beating about the bush, the threat is ethnic. And haven't they actually been talking ethnicity this week, Yvonne? They indeed have. And before we go into the ethnicity question, because there was a trending hashtag which had over 275,000 tweets, or we call them posts now. But I just wanted to echo what you were saying about the tone of both the president and Nelson Koech. So while they're speaking about their terms,
So you hear what their terms, well, yeah, theirs collectively, clearly they're one. I mean, for an MP to even speak after the president and contradict him and in fact go a step further is interesting. But again, the president made no mistake about reminding us who he is. Let's listen to that.
Na matatizo sana. Hata saa hizi bado hawajaamini mimi ni rais, bado wanahangaika Mimi ndio niko hapa kwa sasa. Wajipange. Mimi ndio niko hapa.
So the question I want to ask is what crisis are they responding to exactly? And what's being said by the protesters? Are we in a different country? Are we hearing or seeing different things? So when people are out on the streets and protesting about the cost of living, about the governance and the rule of law and going to the constitution, what exactly are they responding to? I think that's what is interesting. Sam, you want to jump in and then we can talk about the big elephant in the room. And today we're going to talk about it, the ethnicity question. We're going to get into that in a bit.
Right. When you listen to it, I think they're still focused on the political question. That's why when you hear them speak, they're talking about the tenure of President William Ruto. They're talking about wengine. Those are the political leaders. You'll see these demonstrations have been interfered with by Ukabila. The president is citing the terms that was served by President Moi. President Moi had several, 24 years.
Yeah.
Those are many, almost 5, if I'm not mistaken, from 17
well,
to
it depends
2000.
because, the rule of, the laws changing and everything.
Yes, but in total, those are many terms. Then references President Mwai Kibaki, who was able to complete his 2 terms. President Uhuru Kenyatta was able to complete 2 terms. But then when you listen to him, even when he's saying, hawa vijana wamekosa kuwa na kazi sahi, are you saying that during President Kenyatta's tenure, they had jobs and now they don't? So you can see there's a bit of dismissing what the deeper grievances might be, and the attention here is to deal with the political question. And I'm just reflecting on what the government has been doing. So you find, initially you saw what CS Kipchumba Murkomen said, when you see them approaching the police stations, shoot, which would be similar to shoot on sight. Then the president has said shoot to demobilize, perhaps, or to break a leg, or sounds wrong.
Actually, no, the break a leg is actually a good thing, but not according to the president anyway.
Then the member of parliament for Belgut coming out and saying shoot to kill. I'm just wondering, if you to look at the constitution, section 33, which is on freedom of expression. So they have a right to express themselves, but also that right is limited if that expression extends to propaganda for war, incitement to violence, and of course, hate speech and advocacy of hatred. So there are several politicians that are guilty already on advocacy of hatred, which constitutes ethnic incitement, vilification of others, so incitement to cause harm. Already.
Incitement to cause harm.
So when you talk about incitement to violence, is it okay when those in power incite the police officers against the people? So is it okay to incite against state violence? Because of course the police service ideally would have the monopoly of violence. So when does incitement become incitement? Is it when someone outside of government says whatever they said, never mind whether they are telling the police officers, all the citizens? But then again, like Lina says about the place where Nelson Koech was making this statement, you see, if he wanted to tell the police officers, he can write a letter, he can call them to the house, he can call the Interior Cabinet Secretary to their house and instruct him. There are actually police officers standing behind him. We could actually just turn and tell them, guys, when you see these guys, shoot to kill. So when he expresses it using a microphone, making sure that not just the people that are listening to him, but also the millions of Kenyans are hearing him. So who is he telling? Is he just inciting the police against the people, or also the people against the people? Because you see, once the message is out, you have no control over where it goes.
And also the people against the police.
Exactly. At this point that we speak, we're having this conversation because that information has come all the way from Belgut to Kilimani, where our studios are located. And so people have heard it. What are they supposed to think? So Kenyans hearing this, what are they supposed to think? This young people have grievances, or even this political class who the president is accusing of not wanting him to finish the term, if they hear such sentiments, what are they supposed to do with that information? So NCSC, if they want to take action, when they read the Constitution and that fact of incitement to violence and advocacy for hatred to cause harm, what are they thinking at this point in time?
To answer your question, just look into that camera and say what he said and see what will happen. I dare you. It will not be 2 seconds. And please, you have your camera, please. There it is. Yeah. Just attempt to say what.
Okay.
Now your tone.
No, let me say
and with that tone.
Because you have dared me, let me say it.
Okay.
I am not the member of parliament.
Well played. Because you know what would happen. Huh? This show would not end before they come after you. And you see, this is what we're talking about in terms of what question you're seeking to answer and what issues, and whether you're actually listening. You know, the president himself said, well, you know, you allowed so-and-so to finish 2 terms, so-and-so, what's the problem with me? And I thought, that's a moment for reflection, right? So, you know, even the phrase that when you're pointing one finger at someone, there's others that are pointing back at you. And I thought, for me, at that moment when he said, but why me? Sit down and think about it. Perhaps reflect. Why you? I don't know, but why you? Maybe a moment for reflection rather than this tiger and tigritude, mimi ndio niko, and I'm not going anywhere. But then one of the other issues that then you start to wonder about whether they are addressing the right question is the question of ethnicity has come up again. For context, and today, I hope, Linus, we can speak openly, because sometimes when we speak about the ethnicity question, we have euphemisms and we talk about this community that comes from this region. But maybe it's about time we speak about it openly. So the hashtag "We Are All Kikuyus" was trending online. Like I said, at some point when I looked at that trend, there was 275,000 posts about it. But this all stemmed from what we see as an attempt to say that this is for one region or one community or what's happening in that particular region. This is all so very far away from, you know, all the issues that started from June 2024 to date. But here we are again. This is our fallback, isn't it, Linus? You know, if there is a problem, don't deal with it, but throw ethnicity at the problem.
Yes, and that is the typical political refuge for Kenyan politicians. If you find it difficult, call in the tribe, bring in ethnicity. And that will, remember, even on corruption cases, we've seen politicians when they face summons from the ESCC, you know, they tell the community that we have been summoned. It's not.
It's not just me.
It's not just me. It's you they want.
Yeah.
And this is typically what's going on right now. And it's not even about us talking about it, but the politicians themselves have finally found the courage. We are hearing them talking tribe. And this is an argument between two communities. You know, and by the president saying, why not Kibaki and why not Uhuru, he was clearly saying something that has ethnic connotations. I think we have that bite on two. Yeah.
Tafadhali Bwana Rais, you shouldn't be the source of threats in Kenya. Wacha kutuambia ya kwamba tutakujua wewe ni rais. Sisi ndio tulikuchagua na tulikuchagua uwe rais wa Kenya. Wacha kututisha. Sisi hapana watu wa kutishwa. Hii fujo yote wananiletea, mbona hawakuletea Kibaki? Mbona hawakuletea Uhuru? Mimi nimenyamaza, mimi nimewavumilia, lakini mahali imefika. Enough is enough. You can call me whatever names you want to call me, but I will make sure that there is peace and stability in Kenya by all means possible.
Now, this is what the politics wants to reduce it to. It's not about any other grievances, except that this president is not coming from the same place as the last two. And is this really accurate that there's not been a lot of noise before against President Kibaki and President Uhuru Kenyatta? That's not true. What is true is all the presidents have always faced some challenges, either from their own regions or other regions. And indeed, in the last term of President Uhuru Kenyatta, remember that the relationships between him and the then Deputy President William Ruto were really, really bad. The only thing that didn't happen that time was there was no impeachment. And perhaps President Uhuru Kenyatta at the time, might have thought through what that would have meant. Because the problems President Ruto is facing right now is with Rigathi Gachagua is because of the impeachment. It's because of the removal of Gachagua as deputy president. And we're not even going to say, was it right or wrong, or whether he was the right person to be deputy president. I mean, politicians always have there are questions about their fitness for most offices. So, but Uhuru, unlike President Ruto, did not move to impeach his deputy. And I just want to listen to former President Uhuru Kenyatta decrying the abandonment by former Deputy President Ruto in 1.19.
Uko wapi? Badala ya kunisaidia kuondoa hiyo shida, wewe uko kwa soko kusema ulizeni ule. Basi si ungewacha uniwachie mimi nitafute mtu ambaye angenisaidia jameni. Wewe unajua hii shida sio ya mtu. Hii ni shida ya uko wapi wakati mimi nakuhitaji?
Okay, that was former President Uhuru Kenyatta lamenting the absence of his deputy president from duty. And I want us to listen to Deputy President William Ruto at the time blasting his boss Uhuru Kenyatta in 1.20.
Tafadhali Bwana Rais, you shouldn't be the source of threats in Kenya. Wacha kutuambia ya kwamba tutakujua wewe ni rais. Sisi ndio tulikuchagua na tulikuchagua uwe rais wa Kenya. Wacha kututisha. Sisi hapana watu wa kutishwa.
So we've gone through this, and we are well into our third term of this kind of drama, because in the first term of President Uhuru Kenyatta, we were told by a very close confidant of the president at the time that in the second term he will not be the same kind of president, meaning he's going to deal with his deputy president. Now, and President Ruto, unlike his predecessor, did not wait for the second term, which is typically what a calculating politician would have done. He dealt with Rigathi Gachagua in his first term, and what we are actually experiencing right now is part of that fallout. And it's actually minimizing the viewpoint of government, because even security agencies, they are reducing this to something very, very small. So much so that I think as a country we are missing the big elephant in the room. When youth turn up and say it's about the cost of living, it's about unemployment, it's about
good governance.
It's about the soft issues. But still, when the state agencies take their binoculars and all they see is Rigathi Gachagua versus President William Ruto, then we are caught in this, where for the last 1 year, we have not really made much progress politically, because there's a lot of firefighting, there's a lot of sniping between the two sides. And I think a lot of the time for this country is currently being wasted in those fights.
Yeah, and just, as we take the break, they're using old tactics that might have worked 20, 30 years ago in terms of whipping up tribal emotions, where there's an issue with the people, but you have a political solution to it. So after June 2024, what do? You decide to bring on an opposition party into government. All of these responses might have worked then. But they don't work now with the young people who, by the way, are the majority because they see right through it, which was why that hashtag was trending, for them to say, look, if you're trying to make this about tribal, then, we're going to transcend that. And maybe it's about time that they started to sort of catch up with, this is a different, breed of young people in the country who see things very differently and for whom the response would have to be different. But then again, yes.
Just one thing that should be pointed out.
Yeah.
I mean, when the president talks about his two predecessors, the last three presidents have been elected by exactly the same political base.
Go figure. Yeah. Very important point to note. Let's take a break. As we do that, this is to show you the efficiency of government. Like we reported just this evening, the High Court has said that the 6 commissioners and chairperson of the commission were duly appointed, and that the government should re-gazette their appointment to regularize that to enable them be sworn in. And just this evening, the Gazette notice for their appointment is out. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, Erastus Ethekon, Anjeri Nderitu, Moses Alutalala Mukhwana, Mary Karen Sorobit, Hassan Nur Hassan, Francis Odhiambo Adwol, and Fahima Arafat Abdallah have been gazetted as chair and commissioners of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, dated this 10th of July, just a few moments ago. That Gazette notice is in.
The other one was
just
dated
about a note.
10th June.
The other one was dated 10th June. Yes, exactly. That's right. So there you have it. Very quickly, right after the High Court has ruled, the government has gazetted the appointment of these commissioners of the IEBC. Let's take a break. There's lots that's happening. When we come back, we have more to talk about regarding the aftermath. There's a script that plays on repeat after every protest in this country. It doesn't matter who is protesting. It doesn't matter what they're saying. And it certainly doesn't matter how peacefully they do it. The response, like clockwork, is the same. Foreign agents, treason, an attempt to overthrow the government. In 2024, the Ford Foundation was publicly blamed until the accusation was quietly withdrawn. The president, if you recall, called protesters treasonous criminals. This year, the deputy president and other members of the executive claimed that there is an active attempt to topple the government. Now let's just pause and take that in, because treason is not a slogan. It is a serious criminal offense. It is one of the gravest charges in any country. Attempting to overthrow the government is not an opinion. It's a very serious charge. And a coup? Well, that's not a PR problem. That is a national security emergency. So here's the question. If that's really what's happening, why hasn't anyone been arrested? This government has access to intelligence briefs, surveillance capabilities, the DCI, the NIS, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. If there's truly a coup being plotted with foreign money and local collaborators, then you have the tools, you have the power, and you have the duty to act. I mean, as the world's most famous sports brand says, and no, this is not an endorsement, just do it. Arrest the conspirators, charge them, take them to court, protect the state. Because if someone is truly attempting to overthrow a democratically elected government, you don't call a press conference, you don't post a hashtag, you don't insinuate or imply, you act. But if you don't, then you're doing something else. You're playing politics, you're spinning narratives, and you're using national security as an excuse, a narrative and a pretext to something more ominous, to clamp down on any voices of discontent. And that is dangerous. When a protest is painted as a plot against the government, and every chant is called foreign-funded treason, then the burden of proof immediately falls on those alleging to table the evidence. When such a serious claim comes from the president or the cabinet secretary in charge of national security, they become duty-bound to prove the allegations and act for the sake of the credibility of the officers they hold, if not for their own personal credibility. It's also a good way of office holders to show that they respect the intelligence of not just those they work with, but also those to whom their messages are directed. An ordinary mwananchi is not exactly a moron. He or she is a citizen of a country that enjoys one of the highest literacy rates in the world. Some of them are old enough to have witnessed every trick in the Kenyan political bags. Some of them took part in countrywide, state-organized demonstrations against General Odongo and his terror outfit, oddly named the February 18 Revolutionary Army, FERA. It was a thrilling episode of euphoric national fiction, organized by the state, invoking the oldest excuse in the book, national security. Now, before we burn any effigies, let us have the real suspects this time. Give us the coup plotters. Arrest them dramatically and produce them in the nearest terror or treason court. But if this is all spin and part of a protracted post-election fallout, then let's give Kenyans a break by respecting their intelligence and the intelligence of their security and intelligence services. That's my take. Welcome back. You're watching News Gang. So even with all the political rhetoric, there seem to be some people who are thinking of what happens and where we go from here. Even with all of people on either side standing their ground and nobody ceding and perhaps being the bigger person in the room. But we're hearing now a call we are very familiar with, perhaps all too familiar in this country. Let's listen to Deputy President Kithure Kindiki.
Plead with you, fellow countrymen. We cannot build this country through chaos, through incitement, and through violence. We must learn to resolve our national problems through consultations, discussions, and through peaceful means. Na wale wananchi ambao wako na maoni tofauti, wako na uhuru wa kutoa maoni tofauti, bora wafanye hivyo kwa njia ya amani.
So that was a little bit general, but then it got more specific and with some perhaps reminiscences of what we just saw with the election of a pope recently. This is Raila's very specific proposal as to where we go from here.
An inclusive, intergenerational, national conclave to hear our people across all divides and come up with irreducible reforms and changes necessary to take the country forward. So the conclave envisage comes up with better and sustainable ways for addressing transparency, accountability, and impunity, especially with regard to corruption, and ensuring that leaders are held accountable for their actions. I propose that the forum comes up with a comprehensive and sustainable strategy for addressing youth unemployment and the expansion of opportunities for youth in the formal and informal sectors. Such a national conclave must have a clear terms of reference and be populated and helmed by the most serious and sober minds in our nation. The proceeds of the national dialogue be subjected to a referendum.
So, so first of all, a conclave is, do you want to define that for us? I feel, in fact, ill-placed or ill-equipped to do that. But we'll get to the definition of it in a moment. But yeah, that's Raila Odinga's prescription.
You know, for sure, we need a solution out of this. We cannot continue like this because if it's about protests, killings, destruction of property. Then the government comes and says that watajua hawajui. Then we have another wave. Then there's some orders given across different parts of the country, orders that have no legal bearing, but have an impact on the national mood and even where we go as a country. There has to be someone or something being done to really resolve some of these concerns. And this is an opportunity that has been missed since June 2024. After that acknowledgement of what had happened, you recall the statement of the president on the 26th of June 2024, and subsequently in different platforms, including the interview with Linus and 2 other journalists. So an acknowledgement then that there was a problem, and then coming up with some of the solutions, which included, of course, cutting on national expenditure or government expenditure, which obviously we know now because you've seen some of the reports of the financial year 2024-2025, it was just lip service because it was never implemented, and never mind that it has an impact again on the country, because 1 year later we are talking about these matters because there are several things that have not been resolved. So the statement by Professor Kithure Kindiki, I must say, is a welcome one, that someone is acknowledging there's a problem and calling for dialogue. But then the question is, how do we do that dialogue? I can see the struggle with the former Prime Minister, who has called for dialogue on so many occasions. Sometimes he calls it dialogue, sometimes he says national conversation, sometimes he calls it let's talk. It was once building bridges under President Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure. It became the National Dialogue Committee under William Ruto, and recently became an MOU between UDA and ODM, which is the highest sort of cooperation agreement we have seen between a ruling party and the party that lost the election. For him to cite a national conclave, first of all, it's a contradiction, because if you have to strictly define what a conclave is, and you'll benefit from that by looking at what different sites are saying. So in the Roman Catholic Church, it is the Assembly of Cardinals for the election of a pope.
But please define how they do it.
The last I checked, we had a pope. But the other thing is that the meaning of conclave is a private meeting or secret assembly, especially a meeting of Roman Catholic cardinals. So of course, it's not an exclusive title for the meeting of cardinals, but there's that element that it's private, it's secret, and sometimes or most times it is confidential. But the former Prime Minister is calling for that national conclave. And there's something interesting that he says to us at the end. Let me just say, a national conclave to hear our people across all divides and come up with irreducible reforms. Again, reforms to the Constitution. Now, NADCO came up with a report and recommended different changes to laws and the Constitution. Of course, that's why perhaps tomorrow we'll have new commissioners in office. It's the product of NADCO and thereafter legislation by Parliament. Now, he also says that that team should only have the most serious and sober minds in our nation. Who are these people?
Who are they?
Because there are very many serious people, very many sober people. Unfortunately, we don't see many of them in our political leadership at the moment. Yet, if it has a way of ending up in a referendum, unless it's a people-led initiative or popular initiative to amend a constitution, because what do you take to a referendum? Is it a constitutional amendment or it's just thoughts? If it's a constitutional amendment, then it has to be a popular initiative. When you talk about a conclave, a national conclave, leading to that process, you'd expect that it has to go through Parliament. So maybe it's a parliamentary initiative, but then what was the National Dialogue Committee about? It was also a parliamentary initiative that has led us to where we are. Again, if you look at what the leaders have been saying, several members of Parliament indeed, and you look at the platforms on X, on Facebook, or whatever other platforms on social media that you have, they are actually some of the biggest contributors of the situation we're in, whether it's about ethnicity, ethnic hate, stratification of the country, they are responsible. Yet they sit at the National Assembly or the Senate. If they sit at the National Assembly, they represent the aspirations of the people. But online and other platforms, including public meetings, they're spreading all these other conversations, this hatred against communities and different persons in the country. How then do we walk this journey? So there's a participation, there's a call by the former Prime Minister, who's one of the eldest political leaders or political figures we have in the country. But how do we proceed at a time that we've seen the president coming out and saying what this is?
It's a coup. Yeah.
Exactly.
So do you talk your way out of a coup? Is that how it works?
Now, those are the questions that I don't know if a conclave can respond to.
Yeah.
Of sober minds.
And an
the best.
Yes, and an intergenerational one.
Yeah.
We've heard this before, perhaps not used that word, but if you recall last year after the June 2024 protests, the president attempted to put together a 100-member committee to talk. I think initially it didn't quite include young people. The young people complained, then they were added, and that
disappeared
out. Yeah, we didn't hear much of it.
Yeah.
Jamila, we talk a lot.
We talk a lot. Yvonne, and in past attempts, you mentioned a few of them, what we were talking about, elite consensus. There were people at that level who ended up dishing out positions so that things can quiet down. Because of this whole thing about ethnicity, it comes in there, because you have this belief that tukipatia kiti people from particular communities, watu watatulia. That thing of mtu wetu akipata sisi pia tumepata. But that will not work this time, because there has to be something different. The young people have come out in ways that they never have in the past. They want things to change, because if you look at the things that they're asking for, opportunities, they want better use of resources, they want more accountability, they want good governance, they want jobs, they want opportunities, and those things need to be seen, to be given umuhimu, the fact that we're actually listening to what you're saying. Will this mean that you have an open dialogue with a lot of young people in it? I don't know. But what I do know is that it has to be different from what we've seen in the past. It cannot be people at that top level talking amongst themselves and deciding to reward themselves, hoping that would sort things out. Kenyans have a dream about what kind of Kenya they want for themselves and for the future. And it's important that what the dream that they envision needs to look like there are people who want it to come to become a reality. What exactly is this? And of course, using constitutional means to get to the point where people feel like we're included, we're being listened to, our problems are being given importance, there's priority. We have that we are looking like we have a plan to go where we should be. Because Yvonne, we mentioned here before how we do not want to see June 25th, 2026 to be what we saw this year. We don't want to see Sabasaba next year to be what we've seen this year. So there are things that have to be done for us not to see what we've seen this year.
And you know, it's even about, on one hand, you hear, what's being said as an attempt to overthrow the government, and I am president, and this is what's going to happen, and this is what will not happen. Are these the people you want to speak with? So there's one hand, there's this tone that says no. And then on the other hand, there is, one that says, okay, let's sit down and talk. What does that table look like? And are we even at that point where temperatures are calmer for us to do that? There's been a response to that call for an intergenerational national conclave. Martha Karua was here with me earlier on Tuesday and responded to that call.
We are together on that one.
Okay.
You cannot dialogue with somebody who has put a foot on your throat. And by choosing to identify with the boot, the person putting the boot on the throat of Kenyans, then that voice does not sound the same to me as it sounded before. So I talked of Kenyans of goodwill. So his voice is masked by the voice of the blood-based government.
So, Linus, we've had a broad-based government before that. And you see all of these attempts. We had the BBI, we've had NADCO, now there's this one. And let's, of course, all remember when, as a country, we were brought down to a point where we needed to talk. Again, at least in the most recent past, which was the Constitution of Kenya following the 2007-2008 crisis. We put in a new constitution. But here we are talking again, and it costs money. This talking isn't for free. So now we're talking again. To what end? After June 2024, they said they had talked, and they brought in a new bunch of cabinet secretaries. And the rallying call over the last couple of months since they came in was, but everybody is now in government, so we're all one. Tunaunganisha nchi. But obviously, that wasn't the right prescription for the ailment that we have now. So we're talking again? Is that the way out, or do we have other options?
I think the current political class is in a very, very difficult space, in the sense that we are now dealing as a country with a younger generation that is more educated than the generation that is in charge of the political responsibilities. And that's why answering their questions have been such a tough call. One thing that we need to start making easy to do in this country is the ease of conducting elections, and credible elections at that, where leaders can be changed peacefully and legally and constitutionally without much drama. Because I have noticed, when you listen to the tone of the young people, a majority of them are not interested in any talks. They're just interested in an election date. They want to vote. They want to make a decision on who should be running their affairs. So that's one of the things that we really need to, the political class of the moment owes this country, is finally structures that can make elections demystified, easy to hold, results are accepted whichever way they go. Because the older generation has suddenly, since June last year, been overtaken by events, which is why, and some spoke about the many attempts that we've had at these talks. You remember the talks that were supposed to be held immediately after the events of June last year, and it didn't take place because basically especially the younger generation did not think anything will come out of it. There's also something that they raised last year and across the year. What needs to change is the software of how we do things as a country. They spoke about integrity.
Yeah.
They spoke about depoliticizing places like churches. Do we need to talk about that? Do we need a conclave for that? We don't. The youth last year demanded a behavior change from the current leaders. I don't remember them saying, leave now, but they demanded immediately that you change your behavior, especially when it comes to things like show of opulence that is obviously related to public access to public resources. So when the youth are asking for this, what should be the response? The response should have been a society that then transforms itself. But have we changed from the society that we were before June last year? Hardly. You can see from their social media postings that they feel nothing changed. So this is going to be a tough call. When that call for dialogue, and I think we've all made that call that you need to talk, we need to find out what is going on. There's still probably a need for that conclave, but among the political class, because the political class then needs to, and by the way, they're bunched together. If they think the opposition and government is different, that is not how the youth are perceiving them. The youth are seeing them as one whole bunch that doesn't understand them, doesn't understand the situation they are in. So they actually need that conclave. It can even be a secret. They can go to Naivasha, they can go to wherever. Yes.
Amongst themselves?
Amongst themselves. Okay. Because they actually have a common problem. They have a common problem. You know, they think it's not just about President Ruto, it's also the opposition and whoever else is out there in the current political class. There is this general dissatisfaction with what is on offer currently as political leadership. And to address that, you first of all need to actually understand what are these youth saying and how do we approach it. So first, the political class needs a conclave just to go and do language study and to understand what it is that the protesters are exactly saying.
But maybe while they're in there, go in with a copy of the Constitution of Kenya, maybe do a refresher, a reminder of the laws of the land.
You know, Yvonne, I don't remember what number it was. The parliament that was led by Kenneth Murde. Which one was that? 10th or 11th?
I don't remember the number. Oh.
We are now at 13th, 12th, 11th. I think it was 10th, the one that gave us the constitution. And you recall that the country was more divided than it is today. Yet it is one parliament that was able to give us the constitution. Of course, the Grand National, what was the name? The Grand Coalition government.
Yes.
And at the same time, gave us very many statutes to implement the new constitution, some of which we talk about today were passed by that parliament. So really, it started off with serious warring factions. If you had to talk about the one led by Raila Odinga and the one that was led by Mwai Kibaki. And interestingly enough, the people that we have today, some of them were also part of that, including Martha Karua, who was on the side of Mwai Kibaki. So if that parliament was able to sit and diagnose what the problem was in the country and come up with a solution, how about today? And I know there are all these man of challenges of people that speak recklessly, whether it's to the microphone or on social media. I think Parliament has an opportunity because they have until 2027 August, or when a new Parliament is elected. So that's about 2 years and above. They have an opportunity to really diagnose what this problem is. And you see, just to remind them and to appeal to them, they are an independent arm of government, meaning that whatever they decide to do would actually have the coverage of the Constitution. So really, because they represent the people, there are about 416 of them, including those that there are vacancies which may be filled very soon. So for those that sit in the National Assembly and the Senate, how about just swallowing your pride a little bit, sit, listen to one another, diagnose the problem, visit your constituencies, not to speak to them or speak at them on what you think is the problem with the country, but to hear them. What exactly is the problem? If you're able to decode what the problem is, depending on the different generations, the young people, those that are in school, those that are young parents, those that are just about to retire, what are their greatest fears? Listen to what they are saying. It has been possible before because just last week or the week before, the House was able to pass a constitutional amendment bill with 304 supporting at the second reading, 298 supporting at the third reading. How about just listen to your constituents and come back to the House and have a conversation amongst yourselves because you are elected in this parliament, the 13th parliament. Maybe if you try that, we might see how it goes. And most importantly, during that mobilization, how about they leave out the national government?
Yeah.
How about they leave out even the, what do you call it, Ngao, National Government Administration officers at the ground level? Just go straight to the people. They voted for you directly.
The same way they went to them when they were seeking their vote.
Exactly. Hear them and see what you can do with that information so that in the end we might say that, yes, the situation was whatever it was, but they made an attempt.
But
otherwise, you cannot get to something like this.
The difference, though, between this parliament and then, and the reason I think they were able to sit down and do what you're saying, was because we had the international community that intervened in what was happening here. To be quite honest, we were not able to sort that out ourselves. And so we had everybody shining a spotlight and literally prescribing what our National Assembly needed to do. And many of the other bodies, because we have proven many times in this country that we cannot do it on our own. This is not a call for intervention from, outside forces, but just a point to note, even then, it wasn't of their own volition particularly.
And you're right, we work under strict supervision.
Yeah.
We function so well, especially when we have a few foreigners around.
Yes.
And this document that we are so grateful to have today, that is called the Constitution of Kenya 2010, was a product of very good supervision as well from a number of people. And there lies our big problem, and the problem of the parliament that Sam is talking about. You see, one should stop to actually wonder what it would have been if this generation of politicians was in charge of the independence talks that were taking place in Lancaster in the UK.
The LegCo.
What if this generation of politicians this parliament was actually there in the middle of the Cold War, when the world was such a fluid place, complex. Issues were really, really complex. How would it have been? You actually shudder at the thought of what would have happened. So there's a lot of institutional corrections that need to happen. Today I saw the Speaker of the National Assembly operating from some rally in North Rift. Was it called what are they called? The empowerment.
Yeah.
The empowerment. Speaker of the National Assembly hanging around with MPs out there and
singing the KK song,
dancing, and in those. I hope there are no Sisos cuts involved, considering the traditions of different communities. But that is the entire office out there.
Mm.
Some expecting climb down from an Koech rally to leading an institution that is independent of the executive, that your other arms of government, is not easy. Now, when Koech, an MP, pretends to call for a shoot to kill, is not reading that same constitution. Do we need supervisors also for us to read the constitution? That indeed the Inspector General of Police is not under any direction. That Inspector General of Police is supposed to make those independent decisions. But you remember the Kilimani video where the president was speaking. Who was standing behind there?
Yeah.
The entire national security apparatus.
Yeah.
And they are standing there. You saw the Inspector General of Police,
smiling,
the DCI was there, the Deputy IG was there. Do you think they're actually capable of the independence that the Constitution envisaged? And as long as we don't read the Constitution and implement it, so much so that our youth can look at Parliament and say they can expect leadership. And let's not, to be fair to previous parliaments, there have been leadership out of some of those houses.
Yeah.
And I remember, as I was a young reporter, when the National Constitution Executive Council of Professor Kivutha Kibwana, they had very, very bad demonstrations as well, violent protests that preceded the talks to review the Constitution. It was a result of pressure. But I remember the House and the President rising to the occasion. And you would feel it when the President and the opposition are having dialogue in Harambee House. The country actually stops and waits for its leaders to discuss. I think our youth have seen this huge gap in leadership. They know that there's nothing to expect from the National Assembly. In fact, the Speaker is out there in the rallies with his MPs, who is supposed, by the way, to later call them to order in the House. There should have been some space.
Distance.
Just keep off a bit. Preserve your ability to sit in that. Oh, and the Speaker, by the way, is
third in line.
Third in line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Meaning that's a potential president. And you see them, sitting in some of those places, and you expect to, it brings down the entire institution.
Yeah.
It to that level of that platform in Koech. And these are some of the problems that we've gone through. When institutions are weakened, then let's not be surprised when this young, better educated, agile young population says we can see there is a vacuum across institutions. There is a vacuum, and they don't expect leadership and answers from the current political class.
Yeah, indeed. Jamila, it's time to end this.
Yes, I think we can let the youngest mamalize kitu.
Age before beauty.
Exactly.
On my sense tonight, I reflect on a concept that goes by the name adulthood. It is a concept that can be understood biologically, legally, psychologically, socially, and in Kenya, I must add in caps, politically. As a nation made up of communities rooted in culture, tradition, and belief systems, we know what references to adulthood sound like. Sometimes we get those harsh reminders like act your age, pick someone your size, and polite versions like grow up. All of them reminders of adulthood. Within the family setup, it is the adults that make the big decisions about the present and future of that unit. The children, on the other hand, go through the motions from total dependence to being guided up the various steps of life's ladder. Away from the individual, many traditional communities in this part of the world were and perhaps still are organized in age sets, a structure where people initiated together shared identity and expectations. There is a collective behavioral pattern required of age sets. If you went through the rite of passage in year 1 or year 7, your conduct was still expected to align. You are of the same age set. But maybe I am talking about old times. Today, our modern age sets are our institutions, defined by the Constitution of Kenya. Take Parliament, for example, whose slogan is, for the welfare of society and just government of the people. In this institution, it doesn't matter if you come from the most populous constituency like Ruiru or the smallest like Lamu East. They are all equals. Figuratively, they are an age set of sorts and are expected to be of same behavior. They are the adults in the room or house. Further up in modern institutions, the pyramid narrows to the tip. And as it narrows, numbers drop, but responsibilities rise. At the top of the pyramid is not privilege. It is restraint and responsibility. In traditional society, the peak of the pyramid was reserved for the chief, the age set leader. His behavior was not group-driven. It was anchored in wisdom, steadiness, and service. I am not a philosopher, but societies, whether old or modern, is organized in those enduring pyramids. What else is enduring as the pyramid is the top-down, bottom-up social contract between the two ends of the pyramid. At a basic level, the social contract expects more from the adults, and depending on the level of the individual in the ladder of the pyramid, some responsibilities are heavier than others. Then there's a little science in this pyramid. A heavy, restless, turbulent apex that is prone to constant rocking can tip the pyramid. The structure only works if the top stays steady and the base stays strong. Back to the story of the individual, children behave as the custodial adult directs or allows. The adult does not command the status of fatherhood or motherhood. They are a father or mother because of how they conduct themselves. Fathers play the role of a father, and mothers, the mothers. And if out of frustration the mother backs at the children, they still must remember they have a duty to bring back the children to the line. If they don't, they must ready for a turbulent adolescence and reckless adulthood, which then becomes their legacy. That's my sense tonight.
There's a script that plays on repeat after every protest in this country. It doesn't matter who is protesting. It doesn't matter what they're saying. And it certainly doesn't matter how peacefully they do it. The response, like clockwork, is the same. Foreign agents, treason, an attempt to overthrow the government. In 2024, the Ford Foundation was publicly blamed until the accusation was quietly withdrawn. The president, if you recall, called protesters treasonous criminals. This year, the deputy president and other members of the executive claimed that there is an active attempt to topple the government. Now let's just pause and take that in, because treason is not a slogan. It is a serious criminal offense. It is one of the gravest charges in any country. Attempting to overthrow the government is not an opinion. It's a very serious charge. And a coup? Well, that's not a PR problem. That is a national security emergency. So here's the question. If that's really what's happening, why hasn't anyone been arrested? This government has access to intelligence briefs, surveillance capabilities, the DCI, the NIS, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. If there's truly a coup being plotted with foreign money and local collaborators, then you have the tools, you have the power, and you have the duty to act. I mean, as the world's most famous sports brand says, and no, this is not an endorsement, just do it. Arrest the conspirators, charge them, take them to court, protect the state. Because if someone is truly attempting to overthrow a democratically elected government, you don't call a press conference, you don't post a hashtag, you don't insinuate or imply, you act. But if you don't, then you're doing something else. You're playing politics, you're spinning narratives, and you're using national security as an excuse, a narrative and a pretext to something more ominous, to clamp down on any voices of discontent. And that is dangerous. When a protest is painted as a plot against the government, and every chant is called foreign-funded treason, then the burden of proof immediately falls on those alleging to table the evidence. When such a serious claim comes from the president or the cabinet secretary in charge of national security, they become duty-bound to prove the allegations and act for the sake of the credibility of the offices they hold, if not for their own personal credibility. It's also a good way of office holders to show that they respect the intelligence of not just those they work with, but also those to whom their messages are directed. An ordinary mwananchi is not exactly a moron. He or she is a citizen of a country that enjoys one of the highest literacy rates in the world. Some of them are old enough to have witnessed every trick in the Kenyan political bags. Some of them took part in countrywide, state-organized demonstrations against General Odongo and his terror outfit, oddly named the February 18 Revolutionary Army, FERA. It was a thrilling episode of euphoric national fiction, organized by the state, invoking the oldest excuse in the book, national security. Now, before we burn any effigies, let us have the real suspects this time. Give us the coup plotters. Arrest them dramatically and produce them in the nearest terror or treason court. But if this is all spin and part of a protracted post-election fallout, then let's give Kenyans a break by respecting their intelligence and the intelligence of their security and intelligence services. That's my take.
On my kicker tonight, 2 Kenyans have exercised their freedom of expression and freedom of conscience, as well as right to belief and opinion. Let's listen to them.
Na nishukuru Rais William Samoei Ruto. Wakati jana umesema shoot but do not kill. I want to repeat it here. In fact, shoot and kill. You cannot have someone coming after your life and you do not want to shoot and kill.
Wewe ni ndugu, wewe ni dada ya mtu. Unatumwa kwenda ku abduct mtu ambaye hana silaha. si mgaidi na si mwizi wa mali ya umma. Jiulize hii swali. For how long am I going to be used by this government to continue making the children of other people suffer?
Now, the first speaker, Nelson Koech, is a member of parliament, chairperson of the National Assembly, Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee, and a man of significant connections to the political power center. The second speaker is new to many Kenyans, including myself. He is called Godfrey Masiaga Kakan Mayo, a young man who posted his opinion on TikTok, an opinion that earned him a visit by officers of the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI. From his post, Mayo is extremely upset with the spate of abductions in Kenya, and his sense of justice is unmistakably strong.
A time is coming. You guys will go to abduct someone, and most of you will not go back to the stations alive. Mark my words.
Now, for this admittedly fiery, justice and fairness spirited post, Mayo was arrested by the DCI ostensibly for inciting violence against the police. Never mind that some of the consequences Mayo is evoking are divine and unspecified. He is inviting, or is it inciting God, the Almighty, to deliver justice for families of victims of abduction?
The wrath of God will descend upon you, and most of you will not return to the stations alive. Mark my words.
Now, in dashing to arrest this young man, the authorities are yet again missing another opportunity to do nothing but listen. A young man has expressed something he felt so strongly about. What if this is exactly how 1 million other young Kenyans feel tonight? How many DCI raids would fix that? Let's reflect. That's my kicker.
My memo tonight is an alarm bell. I ring it loud, first on behalf of Kenyan parents, and indeed every right-thinking Kenyan who is tonight equally perturbed by what I'm about to talk about. You see, leaders, especially political leaders, have taken to lecturing parents about the upbringing of children. They have been insinuating that Gen Z protesters as ill-mannered and poorly raised. I compiled some excerpts from the lecture series from our leaders.
Parents must be at the center, making sure that not only are our children in class, but we also mentor them so that we can build good character.
Vijana wetu, wasichana kwa vijana, wengi wanaandika mambo machafu sana. Wengi wanatuma vitu mbaya sana. Kila mtu kaishe mtoto wako na muongeleshe.
They speak of discipline, values, morality. Talk of preaching water and drinking wine. Have you been watching our political leaders on the campaign trail lately? Have you seen how crude and crass it is getting out there on the podium? Leadership used to be about matters above the neck. But lately, the altitude has dropped dramatically, even below basic decency.
Mzuri, mwanaume aliye na afya na akili timamu aendangi raundi moja. Anaendanga raundi moja. Na nyinyi wa mama unajua yule mwanamume mmoja si yule anaenda 1 round. Si anaenda raundi ya pili na ya tatu. Sasa mnataka kushukisha William Ruto 1 round.
Una hii mbegu yangu ikimix mnaonaje? Ndio sababu nasema mimi leo sirudi na hii weather.
Siku hizi wanaume wamesahau, wanatupiga na mapanga, wanatupiga na marungu
na Mungu aliwapatia kitu ambaye wanatakana kutupiga nayo.
Nataka kuuliza hapa na munishike vizuri. Mtu anasikianga utamu saa zile yuko ndani ama nje?
Huyu mama akiwa kwa kitandani si unalala kabisa Utaamuka kesho ingine sio? Atoshi.
You have seen and heard it for yourselves. Now sit back and wait for your next lecture on how to bring up your children and how to raise them into responsible, patriotic citizens.
Ulisikia nyenga ati hai cousin. Ukifika Ukambani nyai cousin. Ukija Mwatate unasema nyinyi mashemeji zangu.
And that is my memo.
Yeah.
It's not even midnight yet.
Yeah. Jamila.
Gituko tusome maoni ya wananchi.
Yeah. Wakenya wameongea. Wamesema kwamba hamkuongea kuhusu property that was destroyed. Wengine wamesema kwamba let me just look at this. Someone saying that where is it? 11:22 p.m. Someone said that yes, that's exactly what I'm reading. You have not spoken about the property that was destroyed. And then there's someone else who says that it is very ironical when the government side points fingers to goons who infiltrate protests and cause destruction of property. Can the government look Kenyans direct in the eyes and tell them the owners of the goons? If at one stage or another, goons carrying with them crude weapons are seen walking side by side with the police, who eventually turn against unarmed protesters, shooting at them left, right, and center, the common Kenyan is left mesmerized. I choose to remain anonymous. They're not sharing what their name is. Then there's someone here who says that I have followed. Yes, if we borrow a leaf from the 10th Parliament, we can deliver better Kenya, indeed even the Kenyan dream. Speaker, I was never under external supervision. We're still trying to check if that's actually the 10th Parliament Speaker, Kenneth Murde, but yeah, has shared with us that view. And yeah, so in exact response to the person who raised these questions about property destroyed, I think one of the most devastating facts was to see much of this property being destroyed is wealth of the first generation. These are not people that have had several generations of wealth. This is their attempt at life.
Building generational wealth.
Exactly, at supporting their families. So to see Maguna supermarket, a county supermarket, and I think there was another one in another...
The lady who had her 3 supermarkets
yes.
looted and destroyed? Yes.
Yes. Right. So it's so unfortunate. And I think we have to find a solution. But while at it, if police officers are available to barricade roads so that you don't get into the city, maybe we should also have heightened support for property also outside Nairobi.
Yeah. And not to mention the lives and futures that have been lost and completely disrupted by young men and women who are being killed every day, usually in their prime, just sort of starting in their careers and their lives with young families. And that is all, of course, nipped in the bud. 31 people.
From Citizen TV, this is Tonight with Sam Gituku.
Hello there. Thank you for choosing Citizen TV on this 10th day of July 2020. 25. And tonight on Data Point, we're focusing on the numbers from the Kenya Revenue Authority, who have released the data in as far as the collections are concerned. And in the financial year ending June 30th, which is just about 1 or 2 weeks ago, they collected up to 2.57 trillion shillings in those 12 months. And out of that, you're talking about an increment or a growth of 104 billion shillings, which are translating to 6.8%. You'll also be looking at what that means when it comes to agency collections, which are now standing at 248 billion shillings. That's the figure that should have been there, but that's what we'll be focusing on Data Point. But also tonight, the News Gang is back as we focus on the latest in as far as the conversations in the public sphere. What a week it has been. You remember, this is the week of Saba Saba, the demonstrations that were on Monday, and the very consequential developments that have happened after that. That's later on News Gang. But first, here are the top stories tonight.
Niseme na nishukuru Rais William Samoei Ruto. Wakati jana umesema shoot but do not kill. I want to repeat it here. In fact, shoot and kill.
You shoot and kill them. National Assembly Intelligence Committee Chair Nelson Koech now wants police to shoot and kill protesters.
Lakini Mungu ni nani bwana? Mimi ndiye niko hapa kwa sasa. Wajipange.
They will believe it. President Ruto tells his critics to accept he is president, warns against protest and distraction.
We cannot ignore these things, and because we are dealing with a political situation and say,
crackdown on protesters. Terrorism charges preferred against 36 protesters as MP Mukunji is freed on bail. Implosion meets rupture and protests collide with coup inside the Saba Saba Ruto Gachagua clash on the News Gang. Good evening. Our sign language interpreter is Njoki Shege. We begin in Belgut constituency in Kericho County, where Member of Parliament Nelson Koech today called for the shooting and killing of violent protesters who vandalize property and target protected areas. Koech, who is also the chairperson of the National Assembly Defense, Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committee, says the Constitution allows the police to use their firearms to protect property and life, adding that President William Ruto's shoot in the leg order is not sufficient. Emmanuel Toh has more.
We will arrest everyone.
In an emotional outburst at Chebirir Bay Center in his Belgut constituency, MP Nelson Koech called for a shoot-to-kill order against anti-government protesters.
Na mimi nataka niseme na nishukuru Rais William Samoei Ruto. Wakati jana umesema shoot but do not kill. I want to repeat it here. In fact, shoot and kill.
Koech also serves as the chairperson of the powerful National Assembly Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee, urged the police to use lethal force against lawless protesters who loot property.
You cannot have someone who is going to terrorize you and your family, and you are telling me you cannot shoot and kill. You cannot have someone who is coming after your businesses armed and with weapons, and you want to tell me that you cannot use shoot and kill. The Constitution, the Police Act, has given the police the powers to use their arms where they have evaluated the risk of their lives is in danger.
The MP adding State House and other protected areas to places where violent protesters should be gunned down.
Anyone who wants to go to a protected area like State House is not an ordinary person. That is a criminal. That is an armed person that must be dealt with equal force. And the only force that applies to such people is to shoot and kill.
Koech turning his guns on the opposition leaders who claim the government has been hiring goons to fight off demonstrators.
If you think that the government is sending goons and assassins to attack people's property and investment, why do you have a problem when the government then goes after the people they have sent, as you claim? Why we will arrest everyone, and I can tell you they are terrorists, and they are going to be charged as either facilitating terrorism or they are terrorists themselves. Yule mama ambaye alichomewa biashara yake ya county supermarket alifanya makosa gani?
The lawmaker telling off opponents over the one-term mantra against President William Ruto, saying he will serve 2 terms.
Opuzi yenu mnatuambia sijui one term ya nani? Nani alikwambia sisi ndio tutakaa one term? Kibaki hakukaa one term, Uhuru hakukaa one term. Sisi umeona wakati imetufikia ndio sisi ndio washenzi tukae one term. Tunapiga term mbili. Unulize. Hati wanatupangia na sisi tumekaa hivi. Kama ni kupanga, wasifikirie hatuwezi kupanga. Ni vile tunapenda amani na wachunge hii amani sana.
Emmanuel to Citizen TV.
At the same time, President William Ruto has reiterated his tough stance over the recent protests, saying the constitution requires him to protect lives and livelihoods. The president said some of his critics are yet to believe that he has ascended the office of the president, as Olive Barrows now reports.
In what appeared a less charged recap of his tough talk against the chaos witnessed on Sabasaba, President William Ruto has warned that deaths, rape and destruction of property cannot pass for the right to protest.
How is it that a demonstration or protest ends up in death, in rape, in destruction of property, in destruction of business? And is that really what we want to do as a nation? I dare say no. And for now, I am the custodian of that constitution, and I will make sure that I will defend the constitution of the Republic of Kenya. Tuko pamoja, my friends? Yes. Until somebody else takes over, I am here, and I will make sure that hii mchezo tunawachana naye.
The president asserted that some of his critics are yet to accept his ascendance to office nearly 3 years down the line.
Kuna watu walikuwa na matatizo sana. Hata saa hizi bado hawajaamini mimi ni rais. Bado wanahangaika. Mimi ndiye niko hapa kwa sasa. Wajipange. Mimi ndiye niko hapa.
President Ruto defended his job creation record, saying he has delivered on his promises.
Many people were asking me, what the hell about houses? What is this about houses? Who doesn't have a house? We had all manner of debates around housing. Let me tell you, it wasn't so much about the jobs. It wasn't so much about the houses. It was so much about the jobs. Because of the housing program, for which I have paid a very high political price, there are 320,000 people, young people, working.
Elsewhere, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen, speaking in Tana River County on Thursday, maintained that the government will not sit back and allow anarchy to reign.
This idea of coming to Maandamano and saying we want to invade police station, we want parliament, we want to ban judiciary, and therefore we want to invade State House. That is not protest. That is not issues of grievances of governance. That is actually madness that we must not accept in our country.
Murkomen having preceded President Ruto in instructing the police to use their guns on those who, under the cover of protests, cause damage to property. Olive Barrows, Citizen TV.
Now, 36 individuals arrested during the recent June 25th and Sabasaba protests have now formally taken plea on terrorism charges as government intensifies crackdown on protesters. This follows the approval of charges by the DPP, Renson Igonga. Among those facing charges are political allies of former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. This as the court has released Manyata MP John Gitonga Mukunji on bail, even as TikToker and businessperson Godfrey Kakan Mayo remains in police custody over incitement claims. Melita Oletenges reports.
2 days after the Director of Public Prosecutions, Renson Igonga, approved terrorism charges against 36 suspects linked to the June 25th and Sabasaba protests, all have now taken plea at the Kahawa law courts. The group includes 10 people from Matu in Machakos, 24 from Kikuyu, and 2 from Kiambu. Among them, political allies of former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, Kinyanjui Wanjiru, Elias Kawanjiru, and Sarah Wanjiko Thiga. The DPP alleges that the accused were involved in the destruction of public property in Kikuyu, including the law courts, probation office, sub-county offices, and the chief's office, in what has been described as coordinated acts of domestic terrorism.
Your Honor must be explained.
Meanwhile, Senior Magistrate Kipkemoi Koech has overruled a police application to detain Manyata MP John Mukunji and 2 co-accused individuals for 14 more days. The court granted each a bail of 300,000 shillings. In yet another case of crackdown on government critics, TikToker and businessman Godfrey Kakan Mayo, who was arrested by DCI officers on Wednesday night, remains in custody at Muthaiga police station. Authorities allege he incited violence against police officers and their families in a now viral video.
You see, everyone that you guys have killed, those spirits of those people are living in the hearts of Kenyans. And those spirits will not be silent until you guys have paid the price of all your actions.
His family, however, says they have not been informed of any formal charges and are demanding his immediate release.
Tumeongea, ameniambia ana shida, aliojiwa tu, hajapigwa, hajafanywa anything. Yangu ni kuwa ni ujumbe kwa serikali kuwa haya mambo ya vijana tuyaangalie kimakini kidogo, kama itaweza tuwe na national conversation.
Many youths are really being oppressed, and them speaking out does not mean that they are against the government. Them speaking out is the act of being a citizen, speaking out whatever we are feeling, actually. It's not out of context.
Kakan is expected to be arraigned at the Kahawa Law Courts. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV.
In the meantime, the family of a man whose body was seen being dragged on the ground by police officers in Juja is in distress and has decried the brutal manner in which Harrison Wachira was humiliated in death. Laura Otieno now reports on the pain of families, including that of a 16-year-old student who was allegedly beaten to death by police officers in Embu during the Sabasaba protests.
Oh my God!
The video went viral on social media on Monday. The man whose body was dragged by police has been identified as Harrison Wachira. Today, his family is still reconciling with the horror and indignity meted on their kin. 37-year-old Wachira, confident of the assurance by government to protect lives and property on the day of the Sabasaba protests, was at his place of work in Juja. Hours later, hell broke loose.
Akaniambia huku ni kubaya. Nikamwambia wewe fanya hivi, funga kazi, usifanye kazi, uende nyumbani, nitakuja nitajua njia yenye nitapitia.
The dedicated mechanic was however felled by a bullet. He had reportedly taken cover behind stalled lorries. The familiar pieces of metal that had fended for him and his family became his deathbed.
Na Wachira alipigwa risasi na ngari ya Subaru zenye zinaenda bila number plate. Amepigwa risasi hapa pande ya kulia ya shingo, mwili yake haijakanyangwa, ile matope iko nayo kwa nguo ni ile alifurutwa chini kama mnyama.
In Embu, yet another family is in mourning. 16-year-old Benedict Muthome was reportedly beaten by police officers at Kiritiri town during the Sabasaba protests. He left home on Monday morning and his family's efforts to look for him proved futile.
Tukasikia fununu kuna mtu alichapwa, akaumizwa, akapelekwa Embu akiwa hali mahututi. Hakupatikana kwa vitabu za Wanda. Finally alipatikana kwa kitabu ya mochari akiwa known.
With the government showing little remorse and making no apologies for the apparent use of brute force, families are left with permanent scars.
Sisi tunapeaga hata maiti heshima yake. Kwa hivyo siku ingine nawaomba, hata askari ni watoto wetu, ni ndugu zetu, ni baba zetu, naomba wachukulie mtu kama mtu.
Harrison Wachira's post-mortem examination will take place on Friday at the General Cargo Funeral Home in Thika, where his remains are preserved. Laura Otieno, Citizen TV.
Indeed, very heartbreaking stories for the families. At the same time, autopsies conducted on 5 individuals killed during the Sabasaba protests have confirmed that they died from gunshot wounds. Forensic examinations also revealed that 2 bullets were recovered from the bodies of Paul Makori and Anthony Maina, who were fatally shot by police officers in Kangemi and Kahawa West areas, respectively, during the demonstrations. And on Citizen TV's Ben Kirui now reports at least 40 people, including children, are currently receiving treatment for gunshot injuries at Kenyatta National Hospital, underscoring the scale of the violence that marked the protests.
For the second consecutive day, families of those killed during the Sabasaba protest camped outside the Nairobi funeral home, anxiously awaiting post-mortem examinations of their loved ones. Although the procedures were initially postponed on Wednesday, government pathologists resumed the autopsies on Thursday. Post-mortems were conducted on 5 bodies, with the findings confirming that all the victims died from gunshot wounds. Bullets were retrieved from the bodies of Paul Makori, who was fatally shot in Kangemi, and Anthony Maina, who was killed in Kahawa West.
Nimepata kushuhudia kwamba alishutiwa mara mbili. Lakini risasi ambayo imepatikana katika mwili wake ni moja, na wote waliokuwepo pale, madaktari wote wameweza kuona hayo.
Yake imeonekana ilikuwa alipigwa risasi hapa, intestine katoka, halafu bullet imeonekana spinal cord.
In the case of Elvis Musavi, Peter Gashanja, and Joseph Wangai, no bullets were found, but pathologists reported that the 3 died from excessive bleeding caused by gunshot injuries.
At this point in time, we've been communicating with the families. And what is very clear is that all the victims are from informal settlements. And the families are families of very little means. We are appealing to Kenyans at this point in time to kindly stand with the families.
Meanwhile, more than 40 individuals, including children, continue to receive treatment for gunshot wounds at Kenyatta National Hospital. All were injured during the violent Sabasaba demonstrations held across various locations. Among them is 14-year-old Solomon Njoroge, who was shot in Limuru. His family says he was playing football at the time.
Mtoto alikuja na akatoa uniform, lakini sikujua akitoka akaenda kuna pali pengine wanaendanga huko karibu na kwetu, wanaendanga kucheza mpira.
Haki ya kibinadamu hairuhusu hata kama tunapigana tupige watoto. Especially watoto ambao wako kwa nyumba. Huyu mtoto ambaye ni kaka ya huyu mwenye alinifanya nifike hapa, alipatikana akicheza mpira. Alikuwa anacheza mpira. Risasi kampata akicheza mpira.
They also allege that police detained the boy at Tigoni police station despite his critical injuries, accusing him of participating in looting during the protest.
Wanasema ati alikuwa anabeba hizi chuma za barabara.
According to the family, he was released on free bond and is required to report back to the police station on June 17th. Burdened by grief and driven by a cry for justice, these families are now preparing for their next steps in the long journey toward closure. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
In more sad news, 3 pupils died after a pit latrine collapsed at Queen of Angels Academy in Turbo constituency, Uasin Gishu County. Emotions ran high as family members received the news of the tragedy. Emergency and rescue team retrieved the bodies of the 3 ECDE pupils, with reports indicating that 1 child is still missing. Community members are now demanding accountability and better infrastructure to prevent a repeat of similar incidents.
Choo ilikuwa imejengwa vizuri, sababu imejengwa kuanzia chini mpaka juu. Ilianza kujengwa kuanzia chini, and I think it's because of the heavy rainfall that these areas experienced for the last 2 days, and yesterday it was really very heavy. So we We'll expect the expert to give us a report on the same.
Wachenzi mara mingi wenye mnapewa kazi katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, tumekuwa walafi, tumekuwa watu wa kudanganya. Wacha tufanye kazi, unapopata ile kazi iweze kukusaidia katika maisha yako. Usije ukafanya kazi ili iharibike ili uweze kupata kazi kesho yake. Kwa hivyo lazima tuwe wangwana wa Kenya.
Upande wa hizo choo, mimi ni mzazi hapa kwa miaka mingi. Mtoto wangu ameanzia hapa darasa ya chini, darasa la chekechea, hadi wakati huu wako college wamekuwa wakitumia hizo vyoo. Hiyo vyoo ya watoto ndio pia walimu wetu wa hii shule wanatumia. Walimu wetu wanatumia choo hiyo moja na watoto wetu wa chekechea.
And with that sad story, we're taking a short break here on tonight. When we come back, remember I told you that we have data point tonight focusing on the numbers as reported by the Kenya Revenue Authority. We'll be looking at those figures, what's in the 2.57 trillion shillings that was collected up to June 30th this year. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. Basic Education Principal Secretary Professor Julius Bitok has ordered the immediate arrest and prosecution of a teacher at Alliance Girls High School over alleged sexual harassment. This is after angry former students staged protests outside the school's gate demanding not just his arrest, but immediate dismissal of the teacher. Willie Lusige has more.
Chants of former Alliance Girls students condemning the alleged predator at school. The alumni of Alliance Girls took to the school gate demanding the immediate arrest and sacking of a teacher accused of preying on underage students for over 2 decades. The protest coming days after media laid bare shocking claims by dozens of former students detailing years of sexual harassment, intimidation and grooming at the hands of the teacher while the authorities looked away.
Explicitly calling for comprehensive and impartial investigation into his professional conduct. 2, that be immediately suspended from all his duties, including teaching.
The alumni also called for the urgent counseling services for the affected girls, many of whom were minors when the alleged abuse happened, to help them heal the deep psychological scars.
The second bare minimum demand is a public statement from the Board of Management of the Alliance Girls High School explaining to us what process they're taking.
One of the persons that needed really to be interviewed was the teacher also. But unfortunately, the teacher has not been here. So you allow us to let the investigating team finish its work.
In response to the demands, Education PS Julius Bitok ordered for immediate arrest and prosecution of the teacher. He further directed investigations to be extended to all schools countrywide to flush out teachers implicated in preying on underage students, declaring that this culture must end.
And that teacher is going to be punished, is going to be interdicted. We have talked to TSC and all the other stakeholders to ensure that he's arrested. And it's not only Alliance, any other school in this country.
The recent expose revealed harrowing accounts from dozens of former students accusing the teacher who joined the school in 1999 of silently abusing underage girls for years, exploiting his position as a religious leader to shield himself from scrutiny. Willie Lusige, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Chief Qadi Sheikh Abdul Halim Athman Hussein has been laid to rest at the Saif Khalwa Cemetery in Kikowani, Mombasa County, in accordance with Islamic rites. The Chief Qadi died Wednesday night at his home in Chuda, and President William Ruto led the country in mourning the Chief Qadi, describing him as the custodian of the Islamic Sharia. Chief Justice Martha Koome also eulogized the Chief Qadi as a dedicated man who committed his life to the service of justice. And as Francis Mtalaki now reports, thousands of mourners gathered to pay their final respects to the country's top Islamic judicial authority.
Thousands of mourners, including Muslim leaders, the political class, and faithful gathered at Masjid Noor in Bondeni, Mombasa County, to pay their final respect to the country's top Islamic judicial authority. Sheikh Abdul Halim Hussein Athman passed away Wednesday night at his home in Chuda. President William Ruto led the country in mourning Chief Qadi, describing him as the custodian of the Islamic Sharia, a devoted leader who gave his life to the service of humanity and led the Muslim faithful with unwavering dedication, humility, and wisdom. Chief Justice Martha Koech also eulogized the Chief Kadhi as a dedicated man who committed his life to the service of justice, Islamic jurisprudence, and moral guidance of the society. Sheikh Athman has been unwell and recently sought treatment in India. Muslim clerics termed his death as a major loss to the Muslim fraternity.
Mazungumzo yote nilipokuwa twazungumza sana mimi na yeye India kwa siku 100. Hamu yake kubwa ilikuwa ataka kuunganisha Waislamu, kuwe kitu kimoja, ile tofauti ziweze kuondoka. Hamu yake kubwa ilikuwa iko hapo. Kwa hivyo tuwaomba Waislamu popote mlipo, kama kuna jambo lolote mwahisi pengine mwaona hapa liteleza, si kwa nia yake ilikuwa njema, Mwenyezi Mungu ajua zaidi, lakini si mashahidi ambao tushuhudia.
Ni njia tutakayoipita, ishi namna kuishi, watu watakao wema, yani wema wake tumeuona katika ulimwengu. Amri ni Mwenyezi Mungu mwenyewe ndiye anaijua.
Former Chief Kadhi Sheikh Ahmed Mukhtar described him as a great scholar in the Islamic faith, humble, soft-spoken, and a pillar in his leadership.
Nilikuwa namtegemea sana mimi nilipokuwa kazini, na pia tukiwa katika mikutano pengine na wenzetu magistrates, majaji, huwa ni mtu mmoja manake very active, na ni mtu ambaye very fruitful, manake ni mtu anakuja na ideas nyingi, mnashirikiana, yuko tayari kushirikiana na watu wote, na anafanya kazi kwa roho moja.
Mombasa Governor Abdulswamad Sharif Nasir are among the political leaders who attended the burial, with Health CS Aden Duale, Mining and Bull Economy CS Ali Hassan Joho, and National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula also mourning the cleric, remembering him for his steadfast leadership of the Muslim community. Chief Kadhi Sheikh Abdul Halim Hussein died at the age of 55 after serving for 2 years. Francis Mtalaki, Citizen TV, Mombasa.
The Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, has approved murder charges against police officer Klinzy Baraza Masinde over the killing of hawker Boniface Kariuki during protest in Nairobi on June 17, 2025. The DPP informed the court that Baraza will be charged on Friday before High Court Judge Kanyuki Mondo. The second officer, Duncan Kiprono, has been set free after the DPP said no murder charges will be preferred against him. Baraza will be charged with murder for offending the penal code of the laws of Kenya. And of course, Baraza Masinde, who fatally shot Kariuki outside Imenti House within Nairobi CBD, will be remanded awaiting his arraignment on murder charges.
That information, Your Honor, has since been filed in the High Court, and it is now HCCR stroke E010 stroke 2025. We have availed a copy to the court, and the matter will be mentioned tomorrow before the presiding judge of the High Court, the Honorable Justice Kimono.
Following the information by the DPP, so the second respondent hearing will be set at liberty unless otherwise lawfully done. Furthermore, the first respondent will be remanded awaiting his arraignment before the High Court to face the murder charges that have been preferred by the DPP.
Now, the Kiambu County government raised 5.45 billion shillings in on-source revenue in the just concluded 2024-2025 financial year, translating to an 86% increase in the last 2 years. Speaking during a conference at the county headquarters, Governor Kimani Wamatangi said the increase was realized without raising existing fees and levies, but through prudence after automation of the revenue systems that sealed loopholes that allowed theft at the point of collection. The governor further revealed that the county revenue has grown from 2.9 billion shillings since he took office, enabling visible development projects, including the completion of some 312 ECD centers, construction of 26 level 3 and 6 level 4 hospitals, equipment upgrades, installation of solar streetlights, and distribution of farming inputs like piglets, kienyeji chicken, maize seeds and fertilizer. County Finance CA Nancy Kirumba credited the revenue increase to the adoption of an enterprise resource planning system which automated services such as revenue reporting.
No, none of our suppliers complaining because they brought us their goods, because they gave us services or contracted for us and were not paid. That is how we have managed to build our ECD centers, 309 in those 2 years. And this year, we are contracting at one time, one go, 178 ECD learning centers. It's because our people have now gained confidence in the county government of Kiambu, that when we say you come work with us and you deliver, then we pay.
All right, now it's time for data point. We're reflecting on the reports of the Kenya Revenue Authority in regards to the revenue that has been collected up to the 30th of June 2025. I want to begin by looking at the global figure of 2.57 trillion shillings, which is the highest in the history of the country and, of course, of the Kenya Revenue Authority. This is 100.64% achievement or attainment of the target. We'll be talking about that shortly. So this is a growth of 104 billion shillings if you have to compare with what was reported similar period the previous financial year. Now, beyond that, you're talking about, so the revenue collected by KRA is split into two. There's the exchequer revenues, which is the revenues or the taxes that KRA collects, but also there's some resources that the KRA collects on behalf of government agencies or departments, which is the agency revenue, which is now rising to 248.3 billion shillings. For the exchequer revenue, it's 2.3 trillion shillings. Again, a record high for the authority. Beyond that, we are talking about two categorization of that 2.57 trillion shillings. It's split into domestic revenue, which has reported 1.69 trillion shillings, representing 66%, and the balance of 34% is in customs revenue of the figure 879 billion shillings. We'll be looking at a breakdown of a bit of that. Beyond that, the major taxes for the financial year ending June 30th this year, the pay-as-you-earn taxes on salaries, of course, you remember the graduated scale, reported 560.9 billion shillings. The other tax head is corporation tax. This is taxation on companies, on the businesses that are run by companies, which is at 30% of profits, reporting 304.8 billion shillings. And the value-added tax on both domestic goods and services, as well as those that have been imported, it's standing at 660 billion shillings, which is an important tax head in the country. There are some new taxes that had been introduced by the government. Digital service tax, which